Yes, you do.
Okay, great. Good afternoon again, folks. This is Linda Chin, your chair for the school board. I'd like to welcome you all again to the public board meeting of the Baltimore City Board of School Commissioners. If you didn't just hear the previous announcement, please be certain that you've muted your phone. We ask visitors also if you could also turn your cameras off in terms of helping us with the recording for the members of the board. I'm going to start first by the roll call just to indicate which board members are present this evening. So Commissioner Bondima.
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Brooks. Is that Commissioner? I'm not. Okay. Commissioner James.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner McFadden.
Yes, I'm here.
Yes. Commissioner Reed. Did he come over? Okay. Commissioner Richardson.
Yes.
See you. Commissioner Roberts.
Yeah.
Commissioner Sykes.
I'm present.
Yeah, thank you. I'm here. So if I'm counting correctly, I'm counting 7 commissioners present and 3 absent at this time. Okay. So is there a motion to reopen the meeting?
So moved, Bondima.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, McFadden.
Thank you. And those in favor, Commissioner Bondima?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner James?
Yes.
Okay, I'm getting an echo. I don't know why. McFadden?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes, I heard the same echo, by the way. Yes.
Okay. Okay, Commissioner Roberts?
Yeah.
Commissioner Sykes?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm in favor.
And Commissioner Brooks is here.
Okay, Commissioner Brooks. Has Commissioner Reed joined us over here? Okay. So we have 8 in favor and 2 absent. Did I get that correct that time, Mr. Stan, I believe?
Yes.
Thank you. Unfortunately, this evening, I'd like to start our meeting one of the things that we do that is not always the most pleasant, but it is the time where we recognize the passing of city schools employees and or students. And so this evening, we are sending out our condolences to 3 city schools employees. I'd like to inform you of the passing of Margaret Gaither, who served in city schools for 48 years and 11 months as a non-instructional assistant at Garrison Middle and also at Bluford Drew Jameson STEM Academy West. And she was also a special education paraeducator at Augusta Fell Savage Institute of Visual Arts High School, and that was her last assignment. Ms. Gaither departed on December 2nd, 2020. I'd also like to inform you of the passing of Keisha, who served in city schools for 2 years as an operational support specialist 1 and an operational support specialist 3 in technical support services. Her last assignment was with Technical Support Services Information Technology Department. Ms. Bennett departed on December 10th, 2020. And I also regret to inform you of the passing of Shelton Stanley, who served in city schools for 14 years, 11 months as a teacher, a secondary teacher at CASA Knowledge and Success Academy and Friendship Academy of Science as an academic content liaison in mathematics, in academic school support, and as an assistant principal at Paul Lawrence Dunbar High School. That was his last assignment at Dunbar. Mr. Stanley departed on December 28, 2020. Ms. Gaither, Ms. Bennett, and Mr. Stanley will all be missed greatly by their families, their friends, and city schools. And I ask that you please join me for a moment of silence in remembrance of these three persons. Thank you. And now, is there a motion to approve the prior open session minutes?
So moved, Richardson.
Okay, I think I heard Commissioner Robertson. I'll take Richardson as a second. Thank you. Those in favor, Commissioner Bondima,
Yes, thank you.
Brooks,
Yes.
James, Commissioner James, are you still there? Okay. Commissioner McFadden,
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm in favor. Has Commissioner Reed joined?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? So this motion passes 7 in favor and 3 absent.
Commissioner, I believe it's 8-2.
2 absent.
Yep.
Sorry, I got that. Yeah, 8-2. After I said it, I saw it. Thank you. And now, is there a motion to approve the closed session summaries?
So moved, Bondima.
Thank you.
Second, Brooks.
Thank you, Commissioner Brooks. And those in favor, Commissioner Bondima,
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Brooks,
Yes.
Commissioner McFadden,
Yes.
Commissioner Reed,
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
Okay, I'm in favor. Is Commissioner James here? Okay. All righty. Anyone opposed or abstaining? If I'm correct with this one, it's 7 in favor and 2 absent, correct?
Yes, that's correct. And Commissioner James just texted me that her internet crashed, so she's about to rejoin.
All righty, thank you very much. This evening, folks, as the beginning of board chair comments, I would like to just share some thoughts that I've had over the past week, as I'm sure many of you have. I am a part of what I consider the bridge generation in Baltimore City. I'm a child who started her school experience in a legally segregated public school system. I'm a member of a vanguard group in elementary, junior high, high school, and college to integrate some of our local historic flagship schools and institutions. And I'm a teacher and administrator, retired, who worked in a system that was forced in many ways to create equitable opportunities for advancement through affirmative action practices. And so as I reviewed and just think back over the happenings of the past week, especially the act of insurrection in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, 2 thoughts and principles that really stuck in my mind. The first is that words have very powerful consequences. And the second is that a healthy society must have orderly processes in governance and in transition. And these 2 thoughts, I suspect many of us have been discussing among ourselves, and I know I have, especially with my children and grandchildren. As one of the first institutions of government experienced by many of our citizens, the school board must Be keenly aware of these principles as we work diligently to make decisions that impact the future of our community and families. During the upcoming week, our nation is going to be commemorating the work for justice that was led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and witnessing the inauguration of its 46th president and vice president, Joseph Biden and Kamala Harris. And I sincerely hope that we all keep these principles of the power of words and the need for orderly processes for governance in the forefront of our minds, so that we can at least attempt to live out the tenets of our Constitution. The school board, for its part, will continue its commitment to focus on these principles as we promote public engagement and open communications about our work. And we ask all of our families and partners that you join us in this commitment. And I'm just going to take a point of personal privilege to pray that God may really guard over us and guide us as a country through these turbulent times. Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge some gifts and donations that were made to the system. First, I want to acknowledge a donation of $50,000 to be used towards educational supplies and improvements to the buildings and facilities from Trust Bank. I'd also like to acknowledge a donation of $23,550 to be used towards educational supplies and improvements to buildings and facilities from National Resources Defense Council, Incorporated. I'm acknowledging a donation of $3,000 to be used towards computers and technology equipment from the Good News Club towards Dr. Nathan A. Pitts Ashburton Elementary Middle School. Also a donation of $1,045 to be used towards education supplies from the Good News Club to also for Dr. Nathan A. Pitts Ashburton Elementary Middle School. An additional donation of $500 to be used towards education supplies from the Liberty Grace Church of God towards Dr. Nathan A. Pitts Ashburton Elementary Middle School. And we acknowledge a donation of $300 to be used towards educational supplies from Pi Omega Psi Phi Fraternity, Incorporated, towards the Dr. Nathan A. Pitts Ashburton Elementary Middle School. Thank you all for those donations in support of the work for our children. Is there now a motion to approve the quasi-judicial matters?
So moved.
Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. McFadden. A second, Commissioner Richardson. And those in favor, Commissioner Bondima,
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Brooks,
Yes.
Commissioner James. Able to get back? Okay. Commissioner McFadden,
Yes.
Commissioner Reed,
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
and I in favor. Anyone opposed or abstaining? So we have 7 in favor and 2 absent. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Santelises for CEO comments.
Thank you, Chair Chinya, and good evening, everyone. Tonight, my remarks will, for the most part, be centered really on the question of reopening that we raised and flagged for families and staff this past December. And tonight, I'm going to take the opportunity just to give a bit of an overview, although our official announcement will take place this Thursday with far more detail. But with regards to where we are, since September, we've continued to expand our optional in-person learning opportunities for prioritized groups of students across the district. We've taken a cautious, phased-in approach based on our health experts' advice, and we continue to improve based on what we've learned from schools that have been offering in-person learning. Throughout this process, we have met every week with our union partners to answer their questions and receive feedback from their perspective. We also engaged with some principals and teachers to get their thoughts on potential components of our in-person plan for second semester. As a result, more than 2,000 students have safely benefited from instruction that meets their needs. The best place for our students to learn is in a classroom with teachers who care about them. We know there are groups of young people who desperately need the support they can only receive in person. Growing numbers of our families want this option, and we have proven since the summer we can do it safely. For months, we have been warning that significant numbers of our students at all grade levels were in danger of losing ground due to difficulties they encountered in virtual learning. Unfortunately, student grades and our assessments in the first quarter demonstrate that the actual learning loss and its subsequent effects on students' academic achievement was even more dramatic and widespread than we had originally feared. When compared to the first quarter of 2019, we saw a significant increase in the number of students failing one or more courses across all grade level bands and student groups. In grades 6 through 12, the numbers rose from 38% of students failing to 60%. Students who failed one or more courses in grades 2 through 5 rose from 30% to 55%. And in pre-K and 1, from 29% to 39%. Ninth graders had the highest percentage of students, 68%. That's over 2/3 of students with at least one failing grade. It's important to note that this trend and subsequent decline in GPA scores affected not only students who were already struggling last year, but also students who were previously doing well. There is a direct correlation between absenteeism and learning loss, which has been exacerbated as some students and families grow increasingly frustrated by their inability to navigate the virtual landscape. Our teachers and school leaders have been working ceaselessly and in many cases successfully to provide a quality education under extremely difficult circumstances. But the fact remains that many of our students cannot perform to the level of their ability in a virtual environment. Too many of our young people are falling behind, and it is our responsibility as educators to provide the in-person support they need to recover the ground they have lost. These students need more. They need to be in class with their teachers, and they need it now before their loss would appear irreparable. Before winter break, we shared that we would present a plan to the community about the expansion of in-person learning options in the second semester. We are on track to deliver that plan as scheduled on Thursday. However, I want to provide a brief overview today of the options we are offering to families. We are expanding our in-person offerings to include kindergarten through 5th grade students starting in mid-February. We will make that schedule available Thursday. We will also provide in-person learning opportunities for some high school students. Our charter and contract schools are developing their own plans with regard to in-person learning So please visit your school's webpage to see the plan for your child's charter or contract school. But let me be clear, in-person learning is an option for families. Families are not required, nor have they ever been required to participate. And their students will be able to continue in virtual learning if that is that family's choice. We have scheduled a town hall meeting for staff next Wednesday, as well as a town hall for families and community members next Thursday. We will also be setting up open house experiences for families to see firsthand what in-person learning can look like in terms of comprehensive health and safety protocols. Based on our own experience and data from districts around the country, we understand that the majority of our families will likely choose to keep their students in virtual learning, at least initially. In keeping with our policy, we will honor our families' wishes, as we have from the beginning. We actually anticipate that initially, 20 to 25% of families will take advantage of this expanded opportunity for in-person learning, which means, in effect, that our schools will still maintain the small group learning environments that have operated safely and successfully since summer. This is in keeping with the gradual, phased-in approach that has marked our reopening process to date. We also know that families will want to see that we can provide this option in a safe way, and we know that we will need to build the trust of our families that we can do this. We saw this play out in-person learning opportunities during the first semester. For example, when we started our student learning centers, we did not fill all of the seats we had available initially. But as families saw the safety measures we had in place and shared with their friends and neighbors, more and more families chose to return. We also saw this as we rolled out additional in-person learning opportunities in November. To that end, for many of our families and staff that will return, there will be questions about health and safety. Since summer, we have proven our ability to host students safely in small groups. The Baltimore City Health Department and our Health Advisory Committee have advised that we have sound and responsible health and safety measures in place. Also, the data indicates that our schools are not points for transmission. To clarify, transmissions are when an individual at an in-person site contracts COVID from another individual at that same site. We are able to determine whether transmissions have occurred through our robust contact tracing work, which identifies individuals who have been in close contact with one another. Through that work, we are able to report that since in-person learning opened on September 28th, there have been no transmission cases at our in-person learning sites and just one case of transmission at a meal site. That means that while we have had cases of COVID, the COVID cases that are occurring outside of schools in the community, which is in line with what we have learned and followed with our own health commissioner. City Schools meets all 5 of the CDC's recommended mitigation strategies for in-person learning: consistent and correct use of masks, social distancing, hand hygiene and respiratory etiquette, cleaning and disinfecting, and contact tracing in collaboration with the local health department. I would also say City Schools has exceeded CDC regulations. Every school site will have CDC recommended air ventilation with MERV 13 air filters, which is the recommended highest grade of filter for buildings, air filters in HVAC systems, or air purifiers in classrooms and other locations. By the end of the month, I'm pleased to announce that we will launch an enhanced dashboard on our health and safety webpage where anyone can check the ventilation measures in place at their school. In addition to these measures, City Schools has partnered with the University of Maryland Medical System, who runs the COVID testing site at the Baltimore City Convention Center, to create a robust COVID testing regimen. Through the partnership, City Schools is offering daily on-site COVID-19 testing at in-person learning sites conducted by University of Maryland Medical Center staff for any staff or students who show symptoms. Additionally, we are working with partners to expand our COVID testing to include screening testing options for individuals who do not report any symptoms of COVID. As we've reached out to teachers and parents, and they've contacted us with their ideas, some have wondered why we don't wait for a vaccine before proceeding. The answer is clear. Based on the learning loss I described earlier, our trajectory of success in our small group learning, there isn't time to wait. We are developing a vaccine distribution plan, so we will be ready to proceed once the vaccine is available locally here in Baltimore City. But the fact of the matter is that many of our students are in danger of falling irreparably behind if we do not take action now. We cannot and we will not ignore the needs of students for whom virtual learning is not enough, when we have a safe, proven alternative to meet their needs. To do so would be an inexcusable decline of our duty to the students and families of Baltimore. I want to thank all of the school leaders, all of the teachers, all of the custodial staff, all of the administrative staff, secretaries who are currently in schools now. I've had the opportunity to meet with some of you, and I thank you for your input, your insight, and for demonstrating that we can safely educate Baltimore City's young people. That concludes my remarks for this evening. I will turn it back over to you, Chair Chinya.
Thank you, Dr. Santelises. We look forward to the announcement, which will be coming to the public at the end of this week. At this time, we will have a presentation from the Office of Legal Counsel on policy JIH, which is student search and seizure, and this is a first reader.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shahrazad Houghton, and I am Associate Counsel with the Office of Legal Counsel. And in just a moment, I will share my screen so that I can start the presentation. So search and seizure isn't new to city schools. And at one point, city schools did have a board rule on search and seizure, but there was no board policy and regulation. So this is to ensure that there are standard protocols in place that are consistent with other city schools' policies and regulations. So what is an administrative search and seizure? So it's a search of a student or a seizure of their property by administrative staff and not law enforcement. So now I'd like to turn to JIH, which is the policy portion. So what is the purpose of the policy? So the purpose is to ensure that we're protecting students' rights, but also to make clear that there's a distinction between the searches and seizures that occur by administrative staff and those that occur by law enforcement. So what constitutes a search and/or a seizure? So a search is an examination of a student's person or their property with the intent of discovering an item or items, the possession of which is a criminal offense under the laws of Maryland, or a violation of any law, board policy, city school regulation or rule, or the city school student code of conduct. And a seizure is the act of actually taking possession of that item. And so who can conduct a search or seizure? So an authorized searcher conducts a search or seizure, and who qualifies as an authorized searcher is actually a very limited number of individuals. So it would be a principal, assistant principal, a school access monitor, or a teacher that's been designated in writing and trained. And so, when can an authorized searcher conduct a search or seizure? So an authorized searcher can only conduct a search or seizure if they have a reasonable belief that the student may be in possession of an item that's a violation of the laws or board policies. And so reasonable belief is the standard, the legal standard that's set in place for an authorized searcher to be able to conduct a search. So how does the policy protect the student? So one of the most significant ways is that it does not allow for pat downs or any other kind of direct physical contact with the student's body. That was one of the major changes that we made since the policy committee. Also, a search has to be conducted in the presence of a third party, and an authorized searcher should explain the basis for the search before it's conducted. And so now to JIHRA, which is the administrative regulation. So the purpose of the regulation is to provide uniform, consistent, and equitable procedures to carry out searches and seizures when they occur in city schools. And so how exactly does the regulation protect the rights of students? So 3 of the most important requirements outlined in the regulation are the requirement for an annual training for authorized searchers, documentation of a search and or seizure on the form for JIHRA, and there's also an appeals process for parents and students. And so again, one of the most important ways in which the policy and the regulation protect students is that authorized searchers must be trained. So the regulation requires that individuals that are designated as authorized searchers are trained. Again, in another significant way is that the regulation requires documentation of a search and or seizure. And so section 211 requires that when a student has been searched or their property has been seized, then the authorized searcher has to complete a form, which then has to be submitted to the school's office within 1 business day. And then last but not least, one of the other most important ways that the regulation protects students is that there's an appeals process. And so that appeals process includes an investigation. And if the parents are not satisfied with the decision from the chief of schools, then the parent can then appeal to the board pursuant to policy BLA. So what other policies and regulations have we reviewed to help develop JIH and JIHRA? And so I just want to also highlight that even going through some of these policies from Baltimore County, Howard County, Montgomery County, Harford County, Philadelphia Public Schools, Chicago Public Schools, the policy and regulation that we have developed is truly the most robust and is the only that I've seen with an appeals process. And so who are we reaching out to feedback for JIH and JIHRA? So this is a list of some of the organizations, the organizations that we're reaching out to for some feedback. And so here, these are some of the organizations that we have met with and received feedback from so far. And so I just want to note that we have incorporated substantial feedback from the community and the policy committee, but we're still working to connect with a few more organizations and to incorporate even more feedback. We have met with BTU, Disability Rights, the Teachers Democracy Project. And so again, we're still working to incorporate more feedback and to meet with a few more groups. So some changes since the policy committee. Again, we've made a number of changes since the policy committee. And as I highlighted earlier, one of the most important was that we've taken out the provision allowing for pat down. Also, one of the documents that we provided was a chart that has some more detailed information regarding the feedback that we've received and the changes that we've made in some more detail. And so any suggestions, we welcome any feedback from you all. Please provide us with any suggestions on how to improve the policy and the regulation. And before I finish, I just want to give a really huge shout out to Lisa Smith-Sherrard. This has been truly a partnership with the school's office, and Ms. Sherrod has been instrumental in ensuring that we're able to meet with the groups we need to meet with and incorporate some of the feedback. So I just want to say a huge thank you to her. So any questions or any feedback?
Chair Chinya, this is Commissioner Richardson.
Yes.
I
Commissioner,
do
go ahead.
have just a clarifying question. In the document, you talk a little bit about how authorized trainers, authorized searchers will be chosen prior to a school trip, and because the authorized searchers are typically the principal and the vice principal, but there will be a training of someone if a school or a class is going on a trip to serve in that capacity if the principal or vice principal isn't there. I just was curious about how extensive is that training? So I don't have a clue as to what the training entails, but like how extensive is that? And I'm assuming a school would plan that out in terms of ensuring that whoever this authorized trainer is has the full training and not just the review of the policy annually, which is what teachers have to have.
Yeah, so that's absolutely correct. So
Okay.
of course, yes, we do want the policy and the regulations to be reviewed, but we do intend for it. It will be an actual training and something that is interactive, so that we can ensure that as parties are being trained, they're actually comprehending what it is they're learning. Because we recognize that search and seizure is a pretty nuanced area of the law, and it's hard for even some attorneys to understand. So we want to make sure that everybody's really getting it. In the regulation, we did point out at least 2 areas of the training, which would be implicit biases, de-escalation. But again, there would also be focused on the actual content of search and seizure. How do you know what a reasonable belief is? Who can be an authorized searcher? Things like that.
And I just wanted to add, Commissioner Richardson, that this policy, while we're presenting it new today, is really implementing state law and regulation, as Ms. Houghton said. So this is not something we're new or expanding. This is really an effort to be very clear on the rules of the road for our staff, in the interest that if this has to be done for school or student safety, it's done in a very constrained, organized way, and really appreciate the effort to put that Ms. Houghton and Ms. Sherrod Smith and others have put to really making this clear so our community understands how this works in the event, which we hope will be rare, that has to be used.
I appreciate that. I just, in reading it, I was like, well, if I'm going on a school trip, like, how am I going to get trained that fast? But anyway, they would be identifying those other folks well in advance, I'm assuming.
Right, and the principal also has the discretion to say that I don't need somebody on a particular trip, right? So,
okay.
I mean, it's not that it has to be the case, and there are some principals and former principals, but if a principal feels, and that in my experience is often on an overnight trip or a trip that further away. I don't think a trip down the street for
sure.
a period, maybe
Right.
a trip you need a full-fledged authorized searcher. You're near the school and you can always deal with that in the event that it arises. So I just wanted to be clear that we're not saying that every trip has to have an authorized searcher.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that clarity. Appreciate it.
All right. Commissioner Sykes?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm
Yes.
trying to get it situated. Okay, so I just wanted to have a little bit of clarification because I was a little confused on where it says how does the policy protect students, and it says strip searches of students by authorized searchers is prohibited, as well as pat downs of other searches that require an authorized searcher to make direct contact with the student's body. Okay, so that's how the policy protects students, right? But I think where I'm getting a little confused is where it says it's a student search, because are we searching the student or are we searching the student's belongings of what they may have?
So that's a great question. And so that actually depends on what the circumstances. So, you know, it would be, if it's a search of students' belongings, yes, the authorized searcher can search their physical belongings, but they should not be physically touching the student. That is something they should not be doing. So if whatever the reasonable belief is that leads the authorized searcher to think that the student may have something on their person, they shouldn't be touching the student themselves.
Okay. Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right. I don't see other additional hands up. So I want to thank you. Again, this was the first reader, and we are still taking input or comments or questions regarding the development of this policy. And I want to thank you for sharing that with us this evening.
You're welcome. Thank you guys for having me.
Chair Chinia, can I just say one thing before we sort of move on to the next piece? Just wanted to also just shout out the engagement chart, talking where you begin to label sort of what you've done with folks, what you've walked through them. I think as we move forward, we're trying to get in that direction, that level of specificity. So I just kind of want to acknowledge that and thank you for doing that feedback.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Brooks. And by the way, Commissioner Brooks chairs the policy committee, so thank you for that update. I'm checking to see if, just looking at time, if possibly we can move one item, the additional information and discussion item, 9.01. Mr. Gant, was your response that we can make that move?
9.01 is a written update, but we are checking now about either 8.07 through 8.09 or 9.02. However, I think we can go ahead and review the consent agenda and come back.
Oh, okay. So then that's don't worry. Okay, thank you very much. So at this time, I'm going to review the consent agenda to board members, colleagues. Just remember, if I'm going to pull quite a few, but if you wish to have an item removed, please state the question that you have regarding the item for the staff. I will be pulling items 8.01 through 8.06. Those are items that our student commission will be voting on. Items 8.07 through 8.09 are being pulled for presentation and vote. And items 8.010 through 8.17 also for presentation and vote. So the remaining items that I'm going to check are, first is 8.01, which is a 21st century update, Highlandtown Elementary Middle, number 237. Okay. 15.01, Chilmar Corporation. And 20.01, Community Schools. Okay.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. What did you just say? 14.01? What number did you say?
15.01, Chilmar Corporation.
Uh-huh. And what was after that?
20.01 community schools.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so at this point, we have not pulled, other than the items that I've indicated, we have not pulled additional items from the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I have one. This is Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
I'd like to pull 8.08 for Clay Hill. Considering there was a delay in opening due to the lack of or the not enough students, we delayed the opening. Would it be most appropriate to reconsider the configuration or adding the third grade at a later time or potentially next year instead of with this year?
That item is going to be pulled for presentation, so I think that can be a part of that discussion. Yes. You said 8.08.
Yeah.
Okay.
Commissioner Roberts, we're pulling 8.07 through 09, so that'll be included.
Madam Chair, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Items 8.02, 8.03, 8.04, 8.05, and 8.06 are pulled in terms of voting that our student commission will be voting with us. Items 8.07, 8.08, and 8.09 are pulled for presentation and vote. And items 8.010 through 8.017 are also pulled for presentations and votes. The remaining items, which will be on the full consent, are 8.01, 15.01, and 20.01. I think we're clear at this point. I know that we are a little bit early, but I believe that most of the folks for our comment, I'm hoping, are available at this time, Mr. Gant. Can I move forward?
I'm not. Yeah, let me check with PCAB, but I do have a video from the BTU, so we can play that first.
Okay. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and move into public comment, remembering that speakers from recognized groups have opportunity to speak for 5 minutes. And I believe we have a video from the Baltimore Teachers Union, which is first.
Good evening, everyone. When I heard the news that Edmondson Westside High School teacher, Ms. Santia, passed away recently from COVID-19, I tried to calm myself down by listening to India Irie. I was taken aback when India sang, because everything you do or say, you got to live with every day. She's somebody's baby, she's somebody's sister, she's somebody's mama. If we do not listen to our educators' demands for presence today here and outside at the car rally, district leadership will have to live with the reality that they are harming someone's baby who was a student at the Claremont School, somebody's sister who empowers her students at Marie Faring, somebody's mama who was a secretary at Beachville just picking up her son from Dorothy Height. With the goal of ending the transmission and state-sanctioned violence, we call on the board to commit to a comprehensive COVID-19 testing plan for students and staff. Because city schools will not commit to a comprehensive COVID-19 testing plan for students or staff at this far in the juncture. BTU has engaged in several conversations with district leadership about testing, citing what other large school systems have committed to and the need for the district to create a proactive and routine testing plan that can be enforced through all schools in the city, not just some. The 7,000 members of the BTU also call on the board to implement a volunteer-first model. District leadership has mandated hundreds of staff members to return rather than first seeking volunteers at their schools. Now, contrary to some district messaging, the school system is not primarily relying on staff volunteers for sites that reopen in November. BTU's proposals to structure a voluntary return to in-person work were rejected outright with no counter proposals, despite the fact that the district believes many educators are willing to work in person. The district needs to survey all staff members and find out what is needed for them to feel safe before returning to schools. One reason that staff are unsure about returning is because there's the real potential for staff teaching in person and online simultaneously. This is not fair. This is a challenge for our teachers. They have not been given the tools or the PDs to perform this task. Before our staff and their families can commit, we need to see what this plan looks like. All 7,000 members know how important our secretaries are and how at risk our secretaries are right now. Secretaries and office assistants were mandated by the district to return to their school buildings in September. Secretaries and office assistants with pre-existing conditions have been denied medical accommodation requests that would allow them to continue to work safely from home. Staff whose accommodation requests are denied are told to take unpaid leave and not work at all, rather than being able to do their work remotely. This is unacceptable. Secretaries and office assistants need to work from home completely or have a flexible schedule where they are not in school buildings every day. We call on the district to protect our secretaries and office assistants. Now let's talk about ventilation. The district will not commit to a ventilation assessment of each classroom. Rather, they're only requiring seasonal ventilation assessments that are already a part of facility checks. All spaces that will be occupied by students and staff need to be accessed. Now, while BTU is pleased that the district is investing in MERV 13 filters, we've heard from our members that such measures are meaningless for classrooms that lack working ventilation systems. Also, the district spreadsheet that shows the ventilation status of each school has many schools scheduled for filter upgrades, but it does not state when and if that will happen. With the rise of hospitalizations and deaths across Maryland and across the country, we need to know when this will happen because we do not play about the health and safety of our parents, of our students, and our staff. Finally, although the district has been silent on the tragedy, the Baltimore Teachers Union sends our condolences to the families, Dunbar Assistant Principal, Mr. Sandley, Edmondson Westside High School math teacher, Ms. Santia, and nurses aide, Marshall McDuffie. Though the district has been silent, let's have a moment of silence for those that we have lost and have transitioned this year. This song is for you.
Okay, next we have a live comment from Ms. Jessica Schiller.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Jessica Schiller and I'm representing PCAB this evening. I'm presenting my testimony in the wake of the National Day of Action to promote safety in schools, and will focus my remarks though on the school search and seizure policy being heard tonight. First, PCAB would like to publicly thank Shiraz Adhatan and the Office of Legal Counsel for their proactive, early, and genuine engagement with PCAB on this policy, as well as providing so much transparency around the feedback process. But we have a series of comments we'd like to raise regarding the policy revision, and I will share them with you right now. First is related to student refusal to submit to a search of their person or possessions. There is part of the policy now that says authorized searcher should advise the student that the student's parent or guardian and or the city schools police may be contacted in the process of this. We would like the phrase and or the city schools police to be removed. Police should not be brought in as a result of refusal to be searched. Only the parent or guardian should be contacted. We'd like to know what data will be collected to assure searches are not disproportionately impacting particular racial or ethnic groups or students with disability, and their refusal meted out equitably. So we'd like to know what data will be made public and at what frequency. For students and families who do not speak English and for whom English is a second language, we'd like to know how the search processes will be communicated to them, especially in a way that respects undocumented individuals who may feel pressure to comply. Also, you said you reached out to OPD, the Office of Public Defender, but we did not see a date or email the contact. So if you can just clarify when OPD was consulted on the development of this policy. And finally, would it be possible to be more explicit about prohibited contact? This is connected to the earlier comment around training and reference to students who are wearing religious garb, such as headscarves, and how would that be different than hat or other kind of head covering? So just more kind of explicit instructions around search with regard to students in that situation. We would like these questions answered and response, given by the Office of Legal Counsel before proceeding. But I imagine, given our positive interaction so far, that we will hear from you shortly. We appreciate the presentation on December 17th. And that's all I have. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Schiller. Next, our first public comment is commenting live, Ms. Julia De Busolo, Executive Director of Arts Every Day.
Hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you, Chairwoman Chinia. My name is Julia De Busolo, and I'm the Executive Director of Arts Every Day and a parent of a third grade student in Baltimore City Public Schools. I'm here tonight to share a few recommendations on behalf of the Baltimore Arts Education Initiative that we submitted in writing earlier this week. As you start considering the school year 21-22 budget, we ask that you maintain the current fine arts school budget guidance and that you consider dedicating $35 per pupil in district funding for purchase of base level materials of instruction for fine arts across all disciplines. This will also allow the district to sustain investment that has already been started with digital music tools and educator training. We have seen some really amazing things out of our fine arts teachers and our fine arts students this year using those tools. Next, we ask that there is dedicated annual district budget for school level investment in arts related equipment, musical instruments, and non-consumables. We know that there is a lot going on in terms of needs for budget, but in order for fine arts instruction to thrive, there does need to be consistent funding for materials of instruction and equipment. Lastly, I just want to also point out that we are asking that an audit of all fine arts assets and infrastructure is done that includes auditoriums, sound systems, lighting, kilns, and musical instruments. This can be tacked on to something that is wrapping up already and is being done by an internal group that is doing an audit of all of the public art in Baltimore City Public Schools, we would really highly recommend that that internal group continue and take a look at some of the equipment and assets that are on school building campuses. Next, we ask that there is better coordination with the Fine Arts Office so that when a building is decommissioned, that the Fine Arts Office is brought in to conduct a review of any assets, infrastructure, or equipment that may be fine arts specific left in that building before renovations commence. And I also wanted to just finish out by saying that we strongly encourage the school district to include the fine arts as a key part of the recovery plan. We know that students are falling behind. We know that attendance and engagement is a huge challenge. We see really amazing opportunities to incorporate the arts into all of those different facets that the district will be considering as they are both reopening and looking towards learning recovery. And just wanted to thank the Office of Fine Arts and the Office of Teaching and Learning for their wonderful partnership and support in really pushing the Fine Arts strategic plan forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, we have Ms. Allison Schechter of Baltimore Montessori Public Charter School. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Allison Schechter, founder and executive director of Baltimore Montessori Public Charter School. I appreciate the recommendation you'll hear this evening from O&I to approve the first year of our expansion. Each year we have over 1,000 students on our wait list, with half of those at the pre-K3, pre-K4, and kindergarten level. We are eager to serve more children, particularly at the early childhood level. I'm speaking for 2 reasons. One, to encourage a good faith commitment for our expansion request beyond the first year, so we can be assured that students can matriculate through the grades and we can meet the requirements of the charter school expansion grant. Second, to request deferment of the recommendation from O&I to adjust our neighborhood waiver, to defer that to the renewal process so there is an opportunity for a deeper analysis and stakeholder input. Just to give a little context to our expansion requests, last year we submitted a request to the board for a larger early childhood expansion as we considered relocating and expanding at a nearby building in our neighborhood of Greenmount West. This was conditionally approved by the board based on facility approval. Unfortunately, all 3 building spaces we considered did not come to fruition. We did another analysis of our current space and decided that we could do a more modest on-site expansion. We provided a 5-year enrollment plan. I recognize that the legal office recommends approval of enrollment caps only for the remainder of the contract term, but this is problematic for several reasons. We want to make sure our students can matriculate through the grades. We need assurance that we can fulfill the requirements of the charter school expansion grant that has already been approved for our school, which is 30% increase over 3 years. And also considering the path for renewal has not yet been determined by city schools. In terms of our geographic preference waiver, we submitted requests 3 times over a 10-year period for 30% of slots to go to students living in Greenmount West if they choose to enroll in our school. After the charter law was revised to include a provision for geographic preference up to 35%, our waiver request was approved, but only at 10% of slots. We recognize the board's enrollment concerns at Dallas Nicholas, but we'd also like to note the types of numbers we are talking about. Last year, we had 12 students enroll from Greenmount West. 3 were from one family, and none of these students were from Dallas Nicholas. Stakeholders, including the Neighborhood Association of Greenmount West, provided support letters for expansion with no awareness of city school staff recommendations to reduce our waiver, as I was just informed last Thursday. I would suggest that any recommendations for adjustments be considered through the renewal process to ensure that stakeholder input is considered. Lastly, we believe that we can be an effective partner in supporting enrollment overall in city schools and offer a choice that often keeps families in the city, especially during these trying times. So in summary, we are respectfully requesting the board to consider a good faith commitment for our expansion request beyond the first year in the following 3 to 4 years, so we can be assured that students can matriculate through the grades and we can access the charter school expansion grant. Second, we're asking the board to consider deferring the recommendation until renewal to adjust our neighborhood waiver, so there's an opportunity for stakeholder input. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ms. Schechter. Next, we have Ms. Shirley Pratt commenting live. Ms. Pratt, I saw you a little earlier.
Okay, yes, I'm here. I'm Shirley Pratt, and I retired from Baltimore City Public Schools on November the 1st of 2020. I was prompted to speak with the board about the retirement process, not because another colleague and I are still having difficulty, but because I heard from someone within this system that we are not the only ones experiencing difficulties. I will not, betray the person who confided in me. You will hear me say we a lot because the former colleague of mine is also, she and I retired from Pimlico Elementary Middle School on the same day in November. And we've had identical, experiences. We talk to each other frequently throughout the week. We also have an advocate, TJ Smith, who has been working with us on our behalf. And I am positive that we would not be as far along in this process if he were not helping us. And I feel very bad for those who are going through this alone. I have some suggestions of how to improve the whole process. I feel that when an employee requests a retirement packet, that the entire packet should be sent to the employee within a week after they ask for it. This is not always the case. I still, me nor the other colleague, have received the entire packet to this day. We don't know right now if there's still something missing in that packet that we've not received. An example would be when we got the initial papers, we thought that was the entire packet. The only thing included in that were the forms in reference to our Maryland State Pension Fund. We found out on, for example, May the 30th, that we had to, that a form that was supposed to be sent to us for our unused sick days to have that forwarded to our annuity was never sent. And we were able to get the forms the next day. We sent it off on December the 1st, and we thought that it had been taken care of. It still hasn't been. This is January. This was back then. We also feel that the employer retirement date, by that date, all benefits need to be in place. We still don't have health insurance through the city. Those forms were not filled out when we filled out our initial packet. So we're just now going through this process and it still hasn't finished. So we didn't know about it at all. We didn't know that we had to fill out papers for city benefits. We found that out when my colleague went to the doctors and came in November, and she called me and said, we don't have health benefits.
Ms. Pratt?
Yes.
Sorry, you're at time if you can finish up your.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I think that a lot of this, that people need help, that some of the duties of the person who's in charge of the retirement, we feel that she needs to focus only on retirement. And she can't do group things like they were before. And we think that, she needs to just focus only on that and not have other duties. I spoke with Mr. Grant Skinner. He called me just before the meeting, and I'm going to send him a list of the recommendations that I have. It's bad that I retired November the 1st, and I'm still trying to get things done. that's not right for me or for any of the other people who are retiring. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pratt, and thank you for also sharing your concerns. Next, we have Ms. Keisha Goodwin commenting live. Ms. Goodwin, are you on?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. And you have 3 minutes. Thank you. Hello? Ms. Goodwin? I heard you, now I don't hear you.
What about now?
Now I can hear you, yes.
Okay. I am Keisha Goodwin, and I will be speaking from my role as a parent and educator on my internet obstacles. First, let me thank you for providing a laptop for me as an employee, and for the school providing my son with a laptop and a hotspot. Now to the main reason for my comment. Recently, I had to pay additional money per month to Comcast for internet performance. My previous 200 megabytes per second upload and 5 megabytes for, well, actually it's 200 megabytes for download and 5 megabytes for upload was underperforming and causing embarrassment, then frustration. My son had to record an experiment for physics, which was choppy and lagging when we reviewed the several attempts to record. After notifying the teacher of recording, we realized it was our service because when she played the video, it played smoothly. Second, last academic year, and as of last week, I could not play videos for my class without lags and unreasonable buffering. This caused disruption with engagement, and I had to ask my partners to play the videos I wanted to show my students before going into small group. In addition, recently my partner was very ill for about 2 weeks. Thus, I had to play the videos and everything myself. Needless to say, not only was there lagging and buffering, but my class and I were kicked off of our platform. This caused me to have to upgrade my internet service to 300 megabytes per second for download and 10 megabytes for upload. This happened twice, and I refuse to let it happen again. I cannot afford to pay these upgrades. I do not get paid enough from my employer. I already have to pay medical benefits, co-pays and deductibles, and just the cost of living per month. So to add this additional expense is just unacceptable. And I would really like for the district to partner with Comcast to offer a baseline service for its employees that performs effectively and efficiently. And obviously, it's going to have to be at least 300 megabytes per second for download and 10 megabytes for upload. So please let me know what y'all can do to help.
Thank you, Ms. Goodwin. Next, we have an email to be read from Aaron Karpowitz. Madam Chair and members of the board, I would like to commend you, the City Schools administrators, and our amazing teachers for the hard work you have put in over the last 9 months, making some very critical decisions in the face of a dangerous global pandemic. I understand that tough choices have been made and a lot of risk have been weighed. The teachers and administration at my school have worked hard to make virtual learning the best it can be. We are now in 9 months into this pandemic, and we have had time to learn from other jurisdictions, learn from the education and epidemiological data, and from our students. Education experts state that students are doing worse and that the inequities that already exist in our public school systems are getting worse. We know that some students are not showing up, and when they do show up, they are not getting the advantages of in-person learning, They are hampered by lack of consistent digital access, and they are not getting basic developmental opportunities that are so important. At the same time, epidemiologists are saying that young children are not as affected and do not transmit the virus at the same rate as older students and adults. While there are risks, strict safety protocols must be put in place, transparent communication must be provided, and there must be a way back into the classroom for students, especially our youngest students and our most vulnerable and at risk. As a parent of an otherwise typically developing kindergartner whose teacher is amazing, I've had paid help to help him log on all day and stay focused. Despite these supports and ample family resources, he is still suffering. He is not writing as much. He is having mental distress. He is not getting proper social emotional guidance or playing with friends in a supervised environment. We need to weigh the risk of a prolonged absence from school. As Dr. Fauci says, close bars, restaurants, and gyms, keep kids in schools. But in our case, we need to get them back first. Aaron Karpowitz. And finally, there's an email from Mr. Jeffrey Washington, president of the Federal Hill Preparatory School Parent-Teacher Organization. Okay. Good evening. As a representative of many families within our school community, I recognize the position which this board is hearing from many different constituent voices, but the most consistent message I've heard is one crying out for reopening of schools. Many students are struggling with online learning. Learning loss is very real. Parents double as teachers while also trying to maintain employment, which may take them outside of the home. Even those families with a parent who is able to be at home, still juggling the responsibilities of their employment and the income which comes with it, while also trying to assist a child who may be struggling and in need of their help. This situation is untenable. These difficulties permeate all socioeconomic groups, but the concern I hear most is for the majority of our school students who come from lower income minority households. Families who have been to this point avid supporters of public education in Baltimore in general, and of our school in particular, have had to remove their children from the school system in favor of a private in-person school in order to address their child's loss of academic skills. These difficulties unquestionably are experienced by many families who are both low income and either Black or brown, but cannot pursue other options for their children who they witness struggle with learning loss every day. I ask that you spare no effort to return students to in-person learning as fast as reasonably possible. There is significant data supporting children in school, which may be safely and responsibly achieved given adherence to appropriate protocols, but providing an at-home option for those who may prefer to pursue that choice for their families. Even Dr. Fauci has implored government officials to close bars and open schools. Forcing all children to continue with an educational substitute, which is readily acknowledged to be deficient, is irresponsible and does real harm to the majority of students within the school system, whom everyone also readily acknowledges can least afford to sustain any additional damage, as well as those children, regardless of circumstance, who simply do not function while spending their days looking at a computer screen for their day's lessons. Thank you. And that is the end of public comment. Madam Chair, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Ganton. Thank you to those folks who presented their comments to us this evening. To board members, based on the public comments, are there any additional items that any board member would like to pull from consent agenda? Okay. If not, is there a motion to approve items 8.02 through 8.06?
So moved, Bandima.
Thank you. Is there a second? James. Thank you. And those who are in favor, Commissioner Bandima?
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner James?
Yes.
Commissioner McFadden?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed? Commissioner Richardson,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Okay, and I'm in favor. Anyone who's voting no or abstaining? So I have 8. This motion passes. I have 8 in favor and I have 2 absent. Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the remaining consent agenda? And this would be the 3 items that remain in consent, 8.01, 15.01, and 20.01.
I move that we approve them, Madam Chair.
Commissioner McFadden, were you?
I move that we approve them, yes.
Thank you.
I second
Thank you.
Richardson.
Thank you. And those in favor, Commissioner Bondima,
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, Commissioner Frank. I'm sorry, Commissioner James.
Yes.
Commissioner McFadden,
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
I'm in favor. Is Commissioner Reed here or, okay. So any opposed, any abstentions? So we have 7 in favor and 2 absent, and this motion also passes. Okay, at this point, I am going to turn over our discussion to the Office of New Initiatives for the presentation on items 8.07 through 8.09.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Angela Alvarez. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of New Initiatives.
And good evening, I'm Trevor Roberts. I'm a specialist in the Office of New Initiatives. Tonight, we are going to revisit the operator waiver requests that we presented for information on December 8th. Just a quick reminder of the process for waiver requests. When we are evaluating these requests, we are looking at several considerations, including evidence of demand, the school's rationale about how the request meets a school need, evidence of how stakeholders were involved in vetting and approving the request, the quality of the programming offered by the school, and the capacity of the school to implement in terms of staff, facility, and other school resources. When we receive requests, Bo and I will determine whether the request meets established guidelines. We vet the request with other key departments. We also present the request to the Charter and Operator-led Advisory Board to get their feedback and recommendation. And as I said, we presented the CEO's recommendations, or we presented the requests for the board on the 8th, and tonight we will be presenting the CEO's recommendations, and the board will vote. We're going to start with some enrollment requests that we've received. The first is from Baltimore Montessori Public Charter School, and Angela will start with this request.
Yep. So Baltimore Montessori is entering the last year of their contract next school year. They're currently serving students in grades pre-K through 8, 420 students, and K-8, 479 students in grades pre-K through 8. They're a program that's a little different than other programs in that they also have a robust early pre-K, starting with students as young as 3 years old through 8. So that's something that's like a little bit different. They submitted a multi-year request to us, but because their contract term is ending, we don't have the board consider things that are beyond the contract term, as those should be considered as part of the renewal process. And so the request is to change their cap from 408 to 441 students for the school year 21-22. If you go to the next slide. As I shared, they're in, their final year of a 5-year contract. They'll be up for renewal in this process, and we haven't. I think we're still figuring out what renewal is going to look like for this year. It's important that we consider renewal in the expansion. The school does have high demand, so that's one of the things we looked at. They have a strong wait list for students. In terms of space within the building, that was evaluated, and so they have the ability to create space for the program, by rearranging how they're using certain spaces, and so they have the ability to do that. They have plans to add staff to support expanding. So they plan to eventually add 3 classroom teachers and a paraeducator, as well as some teacher trainees to their staff as their school program expands. They applied for and did receive the MSDE expansion grant. As you guys know, as a board and just for members of the public, we're not a party to that that process. Our facilities team conducted a walkthrough also to just analyze whether or not additional students could be accommodated in the space, which can be done. Go to the next slide. They discussed their expansion plans with stakeholders and held information sessions and community meetings. And they've submitted letters of support. So they did engage their stakeholders. They have a GAA. So they're one of only 3 schools that we have with a geographic attendance area. That's something that changed in the law. So I think Ms. Schechter shared in public comment how they had requested before the law changed to have a geographic attendance area. So those requests couldn't be considered until the year it was approved, which is in 16-17, when they received the geographic attendance area. The law and the approval allows for the district to sort of control that geographic attendance area to make sure that the ratio of students that they're drawing from one enrollment zone doesn't have a negative impact. So it allows us to suspend the GAA and modify. And so the impact of the geographic attendance area has to be considered in light of an expansion to a school, because if we're changing the size, that's changing the impact. Their particular geographic attendance area sits on one school on the Dallas F. Nicholas school zone. And it is a factor that is contributing to falling enrollment. There are other factors at play with Dallas Nicholas, but the GAA is increasing the impact. About a quarter of Dallas Nicholas students are now attending Montessori, and we see that impact has increased every year since they've had the GAA. And so when we vetted this, stakeholders within the advisory board was very concerned about the impact that they were having on Dallas Nicholas. And so one of the things we think as staff that helps to mitigate that impact is to reduce a bit of the GAA. Dallas Nicholas is a very small elementary school, with about 220 students. So we just need to carefully be looking at that impact so that we're not causing a school to be even more unsustainable by this preference area. So that's something that we're just very cautious of, as that's a neighborhood school for students. And so we need them to be, we don't want to, we want to control the impact that the request has. And so in terms of determining like what that percentage is, that is something that is the right of the board, has always been the right of the board. We've always expressed and publicly talked about the Dallas necklace impact. We review that annually. Like last year, we told the school that they had to not give the that year, which is allowable in the law, because they were above the ratio, because we saw that growing impact. They were one of the first schools to get the geographic attendance area. So one of the things too that we have a better understanding is that some of the impact is hidden when you look at Montessori alone, because they're an elementary middle school across grades. And so it's a bigger impact when you isolate comparing Dallas's elementary enrollment to Montessori's elementary enrollment, and how many students from the zone are ending up being part of that. And so our recommendation is to improve the increase for this year, but with that, to reduce the geographic attendance area, so that it goes from 10% to 8% for elementary students. For middle grades, they can maintain that preference at that 10%, because there's no zoned middle grade school for students who live in that area. And so they'll be able to maintain that 10%. It's really a concern about the impact, like I said, on Dallas Necklace Elementary. And again, as in the law, as in the original approval, we would retain the right to suspend the GAA in any year where the ratios exceed the approved amount. So that's something that we always need to be able to do as part of the control. So I'm going to open up to the board for questions, and then have you guys take a vote.
Commissioner Reed?
Thank you, Angela. I have a few questions. I guess one is, we're going from 10% to 8%. So how many kids are in elementary school now?
Yeah, let me pull that number.
I see how many people in the total school. Total school's 420, right?
Yeah, the total school right now is 420.
Right.
Trevor, can you help me? Can you pull that number real quick?
Okay, because the reason I'm saying that is, if it's proportional, you have 420 kids in the school now. They want to go to 441. If we go from 10% to 8%, just looking at the total school, we can say the elementary is half of that. We're going from basically 42 kids from the geographic area to 35 kids from the geographic area. So net, are we holding parents that want to make a decision? I've never been a pro charter school person, but are we holding basically the feet to the fire of the people that want to go from Dallas Nicholas to Montessori by making a choice? I mean, it's like it's a parental choice, it's a family choice, but net, the system's benefiting because we have a good core group of kids at Dallas Nicholas. But parents that say they want a better school, they want a different school, they want a unique school, are they getting that by going to Montessori that may have higher grades in terms of the school scores, may have better classroom situations? What are the Dallas Nicholas parents losing, if they are losing anything?
Yeah, so one, what the preference does is gives students an advantage in applying. It doesn't guarantee a seat.
Right.
And it doesn't, having it or not having it doesn't prevent families for like applying to Montessori. It just gives students who live in that geographic attendance area a slight advantage into applying to, an advantage in terms of applying to that school. So there will be families, whether we leave it at 10% or not, who could live in that GAA who still would not get into Montessori, because it's based on the, again, lottery is based on, so they have a strong wait list. I would say, in terms of performance, I think we provided you guys with information on performance. There, both schools have
issues,
mixed performance. Both schools have mixed performance.
Right.
There's strengths about both schools. There's some weaknesses about both schools. and there's comparability between the schools in terms of performance, especially when we're looking at student growth performance, which is like the thing that we weight the most, like in our renewal process. You know, one is stronger in math than the other is stronger English language arts. So so it's a bit split. I think one of the big things that we have been trying to just be careful and mindful of is the impact that we're having. There are other families who live in this zone who are also going out of zone, but when you look at the individual, you know, the makeup of those individual choices that families are making, it's, you know, it's like a single student, right? And so here, you know, it's like a student or two. Here, we sort of put our thumbs on the scale a little bit with the geographic attendance area. And so when you're doing that, and that represents a quarter of a school that's really small, like, you know, not in that sustainable thing, I think as a board, we need to be mindful of that. I think you guys need to be mindful of that. As staff, we need to recommend you so that you're making good decision making about that impact on that school.
But is it also a unique attribute where GAA goes down instead of going up?
No, like the board, I think Ms. Schechter spoke to this. Ms. Schechter's original request in the year where it was allowed to be requested, my memory was, it was like, I think 20%. And so the board said no, then it's at 10%. And that was because of this concern about Dallas Nicholas. So like, and just to kind of to give like a comparison, you know, like another school that we have a geographic attendance area. This is new, so everybody's still trying to figure out. For in fairness to Montessori, they have a relationship with that Greenmount West community, which is a small community that's like directly, it's where their school sits. It's a small neighborhood basically, where that's within the zone where their school sits, and so they wanted people who live in close proximity to have a little bit of a preference. But it has a disparate impact on one school. When we look at like Creative City, for example, who also has a geographic attendance area, they created a geographic attendance area so that it did not sit on one school zone. They spread theirs across 4 zones that were nearby to their school. So it you know, so we just have to be like cautious, like when we're looking at a school who's designed a geographic attendance area that sits wholly in one school zone. It has a larger impact than like an attendance area that would be, you know, more spread out.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Angela.
Okay. So is there a motion to approve the recommendation for this 8.07?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Commissioner McFadden, is there a second?
Richardson.
Thank you. And those in favor, Commissioner Bondima,
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks,
Yes.
Commissioner James,
Yes.
Commissioner McFadden,
Yes.
Commissioner Reed,
Abstain.
okay, Commissioner Richardson,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
Okay, I'm in favor. So we have, and one abstention. We have 7 in favor and 1 abstention, 1 absent. So this motion is approved. Okay, so we move to item 8.08.
Yeah, our next request is from Independence Local 1 High School. Their current enrollment capacity is at 150 students for the grades 9 through 12. Like the previous request, the school is in the, well, 21-22 will be the final year of the school's contract. The school has submitted a request for years beyond next year, but as with the last request, we'll be only looking at the request for 21-22. They're asking for an increase of 25 students to 175 total. So 21-22 will be the last year of the school's 3-year conditional renewal. Their previous renewal before that was also for 3 years. The rationale for this request is that the school would like to expand enrollment capacity so that they can expand programming for students and better meet the needs of their students. At their current size, they're a little too small to pay for that expanded programming. The school has seen an increase in demand during this year. They have a wait list of 42 students, and they attribute that to the school's reputation in the community, that they support the emotional and social needs of students. And the school has done work developing its staff in grief counseling, trauma-informed education, and restorative practices. And they believe that with that staff development and the community that they have, that will allow them to keep that small school feel that a lot of their students and families like about the school as they expand. As part of this expansion, they're going to be adding full-time science and history teachers and a CT instructor to carry out that expansion of programming that I was talking about, and convert 3 additional part-time teachers to full-time. The school did engage families and staff on this increase through town halls that were held virtually in the spring and the summer. And the current school facility, they're located in the Robert Poole building, co-located with ACE. That facility that they're in now can accommodate this increase to 175 students. After the school goes through renewal, if the board considers the rest of their school capacity increase, then they would have to start considering looking for a larger facility. And we will be bringing that back to the board pending the school's renewal after 21-22. So our recommendation is to approve the increase for the 21-22 school year.
Are there any questions? Commissioner McFadden, were you raising your hand or just no? Okay. All right. Is there a motion to approve the recommendation for 8.08 Independence High School?
Commissioner, just a point, just for the record, it's 8.09.
Sorry, 8.09.
No worries.
Sorry about that.
So moved. Reed.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner McFadden. And again, this is 8.09. Those in favor, Commissioner Bondima?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner James?
Opposed.
Okay. Commissioner McFadden?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts?
Yes.
Okay. I'm in favor. We have 1 opposed, no abstaining. So we have 7 in favor, 1 opposed, no abstention. So this motion to approve has passed. Now, am I doubling back? Did I miss 8.08?
No,
That's our fault, Commissioner Chinia. Sorry about that. We
okay.
We had a school amend their requests, and so we changed the order of the presentation. So I apologize for that. That's our we caused that. Sorry.
No problem. No problem. So we have completed this section of what we need to do around this set of approvals, correct?
No,
Well-
we still
So
have
now
8.08,
No.
Commissioner Chinia. Sorry, we just went, we went a little bit out of order, so we still have
Oh,
8.08.
No, that's what I was just asking. Okay,
Yes.
8.08. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so 8.08 is a request from Clay Hill Public Charter School. It's a new charter that's going to be opening for its first year in 2021-22. When we presented this for information on December 8th, we presented this original request, which was both for a change in the opening grade served for the school, as well as an increase in the overall enrollment. The school modified its request to the one that you'll be considering tonight. This is the modified request that shows only the change in the grade progression, not in the any change in enrollment levels. So Clay Hill was originally approved to open this year as a K through 4. They were they had some issues preparing a facility. So because the space in the facility in their first year only had space for K-2, they amended their enrollment plan to only serve grades K through 2. And then following that, issues around COVID required them to also delay their opening for a year. So that is kind of the quick context for this request. When the school changed to being a K through 2 and then delayed opening for 1 year, that left students who were in second grade this year who wanted to apply for the school's opening year. Now that that opening year has been delayed a year, those students have matriculated to grade 3. So that would make them miss out on the opportunity to apply for the school's opening year. So the school is now requesting that we allow them to open as a K through 3, which would allow those students a spot in the school. And Commissioner Roberts, to your question about whether it would make sense to delay this request until we see how they do in their first year, the school believes that this request will actually help them with recruitment of new students. You know, when a new charter school opens, it can sometimes be difficult recruiting students for that first year. And the school believes that if they open as a K through 3, that not only opens up the school to a new grade level, a new population of students that they can recruit from, but also that students in the other grade levels who might have siblings in grade 3 would be more able to consider this as an option if their third grade siblings are also able to attend as well. So we believe that this would actually help the school in its recruitment efforts, make sure that they reach their enrollment goals. The school does have interest from students. In their original application, they had support from 183 families that said they would be interested in applying for the school's inaugural year. They have kept in touch with those families so that they have been trying to keep in touch with those families so that they actually follow through with applying. The school also submitted an updated enrollment plan that includes considerations for virtual recruitment that they think will help their recruitment of new students. In terms of the facility to serve students, the school received a 2-year approval for the Our Lady of Fatima building. This 2-year approval was to allow this school to have a space to start out and to develop as they're looking for a permanent facility. And they have given us plans that show that this facility will still be usable if we add the additional grade level. And their plan to accommodate that additional grade level would be from converting some of the lower grades from 3 sections to 2, and that would open up enough classrooms for the new 3rd grade level. And I'm opening up for questions from the board.
Okay. Are there any additional questions regarding this recommendation?
Madam Chair, I don't have a question, but thank you, Trevor, for bringing more context to my question.
Thank you. So is there a motion to approve the recommendation from 8.08 Clay Hill School?
So moved, James.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
I don't know who it was.
Well, Bondima.
I heard Bondima, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Those in favor, Commissioner Bondima?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner James?
Yes.
Commissioner McFadden?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts?
No.
Okay, and I'm in favor. So we have 7 in favor, 1 opposed, and this recommendation is also approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did I get that one? Yes, and 1 absent. Okay. So at this point, we're going to remain with the Office of New Initiatives for the annual review presentation.
Hello again. So I'm Angela Alvarez. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of New Initiatives, and I actually have a couple people joining me, so I'm going to have them introduce themselves tonight.
Good evening, Dawn Shirey, Director of 21st Century Learning.
Good evening, Nicole Stewart, Director of Facilities Planning and Real Estate.
Good evening, this is Lindsay Anderson. I work in the Office of New Initiatives with Angela.
Out and said something about.
All right.
That's crazy.
You know, there's someone is not muted and it's kind of distracting me. Thank you. So City Schools' vision is to make sure that every child in our school district is receiving a high quality education, that we're creating educational experiences that help students to thrive and foster their growth, so that when they graduate from our schools, that they have the skills, the knowledge, the understanding to succeed wherever their dreams may take them through college, career, through their life. And so that's very important to us. This process that we conduct on an annual basis allows us to look at certain levers that are helping us try to get closer and closer to those goals. Next slide. One of the key things that we think about and that we hold in this process, and we've been trying to be deeper and more intentional about, and you'll see as we kind of discuss some of the considerations with the schools today, and you've seen just in work we've done in the, with prior schools that have come through this process, is making sure that we understand the context of what's happening with the students, the real lived experience of the students and families that we touched. One of the things that we've done as a team was to review and to read together Eve Ewing's Ghosts in the Schoolyard, which talks about Chicago's closing schools process. I'm happy to say that a lot of what we do in our work in Baltimore is light years ahead of Chicago. We really do try to center in community, in what's in the best interest of students, and looking at a mix of both qualitative and quantitative data. For us, the quantitative data is not king. But one of the things that happens when you make these major changes is we end up losing some of the history. It can feel like erasure to school communities. So one of those things that we've been trying to also make sure that we do is how do we minimize the trauma of any major changes around a closure, and how do we really learn lessons and figure out how we incorporate the history, the values, the traditions of schools that are going through changes and the school communities of students that are experiencing those changes in any new school communities that we're creating. And really thinking through and not adding on to the systemic kind of racism and prejudice that plagues our decisions, because there's so many other forces that can be at work when we're looking at decisions that institutions like education, government make. And so making sure we're not falling into the inertia of that decision making. So we think through, we use the equity questions that Dr. Durant has developed in our thinking through these recommendations, as well as some of these additional considerations that we got from the work of Eve Ewing. This takes a team, and so it was important to me tonight that I had some members of the team represent. This is work that's cross-departmental. It takes a lot of thoughtful work from a lot of different offices, the enrollment choice of transfer, planning, design and construction, academics, communications, engagement, the school's office, the Office of Achievement and Accountability, forgive me, Chief Jones, 21st Century Schools office, just a lot of us. So, and we're all thinking through these things as we develop these recommendations, and depending on the outcome and how we work with school communities beyond this point in time. So that's important to us.
So in the past, the annual review recommendations were presented to the board in the fall. And then after several weeks where public feedback was solicited, the board would vote to approve or deny or amend the recommendations. In the recent years, we've been able to expand this formal process so that it occurs over several months rather than several weeks. And we've been able to stay with school communities for up to a couple years to really support and drive the transition. This extended timeline of staying with school communities has allowed us to work with school communities to identify major challenges and then work with those communities and partners to address those challenges. So we've been able to do things like improve building conditions, address safe travel for students, and figure out ways to honor the legacy of schools that are closed and their history, and kind of create a shared identity with the schools that they are merging with. Most recently, the examples that we can share are the closure of Gilmore Elementary in 2018-19 and merger with William Pinderhughes to create Sandtown Winchester Achievement Academy. And then in 2019-20, the closure of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Elementary Middle School and the merger with Edgecombe Elementary School. We've been able to work with those school communities so that it feels like we're building something strong with them and not taking something away. And this is, figuring out how to maintain the history and the legacy of school communities and the names that are on our schools is something that we have not perfected yet, but it's something that we will continue to work on and, continue to share updates with the board and the public as we grow in that area. Next slide, please. So before we get into our recommendations and asking you to vote, we just wanted to remind everybody of the new additions through the 21st Century program. Next slide, please. So as a part of our capital improvement work, aside from the 21st Century program, as part of our capital improvement work, we've been able to prioritize buildings based on need. As a reminder, Graceland Park, O'Donnell Heights, and Holabird opened in the fall, are two net zero schools, and they've been able to highlight for us our goal of creating future-focused and sustainable learning environments for students. As a part of the 21st Century Schools program, Mary E. Rodman opened in the fall, and Medfield and Walter P. Carter Elementary Middle School just moved into their new 21st century buildings this month. The focus for both of those schools will be a STEAM focus. And by fall 2021, 8 more schools will move into 21st century spaces. So this is going to be a big year for us. It's important to note when we talk about this, that with this program, we have focused on communities where historically there has been less investment. These are underserved communities where we knew we would have to do closures. And so that just marks this program as, very different from other cities where we're going to communities we know are underserved and historically have experienced disinvestment, and we are prioritizing those communities.
So Joe, can you just go back? You just, sorry. Lydia, do you want to finish your point on the slide?
Nope, that's it.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry. My fault. So those are the schools that'll be opening through next year. So by Robert Coleman, we'll have 23 of the 28 21st century schools open. Okay. Sorry. Ready now. And so we officially began this process on November 10th at a public board meeting where we shared all the recommendations. The board has held 2 opportunities for public comment, a COMAR hearing, and a special work session that happened on December 2nd and December 16th. Members of the community were also able to share written feedback through Friday, January 8th. We received some feedback on January 8th. The board received some feedback on that day. And tonight is the night that we're going to vote on these recommendations. So there are 3 school closure and surplus recommendations before us: 1 relocation and surplus, 1 relocation grade configuration surplus, some additional building surplus. The numbers actually changed to 3 because there's going to be 1 that's a postponement, a change in surplus date, and 1 name change. No name change. One of the things that we focus on is making sure that we're looking at, again, all the data in a qualitative review, and that we're, centering in that goal of offering our students robust, rigorous academic programs in safe and healthy environments to promote success. So the range of factors that we consider in these recommendations are like academic performance, climate indicators, access to programming across populations of students and across geographic areas, the school enrollment and school size that plays a big role into the health of a school, and so you'll see a lot of discussion about that tonight, building utilization and condition, schools scheduled for changes as part of 21st Century School Buildings Plan. And so those are the key drivers for the process tonight. Next slide. Next slide.
Okay, the first school we're going to discuss this evening is Alexander Hamilton Elementary School. And there are 2 other schools that are related to this recommendation. That is James Mosher Elementary School, as well as Cowerton Elementary Middle School.
Dawn, if I can hop in, I made a mistake. I realized I made a mistake. Sorry. So just for members of the public, this is a legal process that has rules around what the board has to consider. So to make sure that we don't make mistakes, you're going to see me come in intermittently throughout this presentation to share like the factors that the board consider. For all of the schools that have COMAR recommendations, I'm going to start by sharing what those factors are. Dawn is going to share some considerations, and you're going to go back and to hear us do something that sounds scripted. The script includes allowing the board to approve, to not approve, to modify. So it's not scripted in like this is exactly what's going to happen. It allows for change, but it makes sure that we cover all the legal requirements and we don't forget something that we need to make sure we're on the record that was considered. So that's why you'll hear it in that way. So for the recommendations that we're about to get, that we're getting ready to start, The Code of Maryland Regulations, or COMAR, requires that local boards of education ensure at a minimum that considerations given to the impact of a proposed closure on the following 8 factors: student enrollment trends, age or condition of school buildings, transportation, educational programs, racial composition of the student body, financial considerations, student relocation, impact on community and the geographic attendance area for the school proposed to be closed, or schools to which students will be relocating. For each of tonight's closure and relocation recommendations, including building surpluses of traditional public schools, the board has received data regarding each of the 8 COMAR factors. The schools recommended for closure are Alexander Hamilton Elementary Middle School in 2021, Guilford Elementary Middle School in 2021, and Lockman Bundy Elementary School in 2021. The schools recommended for relocation are Lois T. Murray Elementary Middle School in 2021 and Sharp Leadenhall School in 2021. The board is also considering a surplus of 2 buildings, the Harriet Tubman Building in 2021 and the William C. March Building in 2021. This report has also been shared with members of the school community, including members who participated in the steering committee meetings. And now we're going to start with the first group and we'll turn it back to Dawn.
Thank you. And so again, the first school we're going to discuss this evening is the Alexander Hamilton Elementary School. And there are 2 other schools related to this recommendation: James Mosher Elementary School and Calverton Elementary Middle School. The recommendation is to close Alexander Hamilton at the end of the 2021 school year and rezone those students that are in pre-K through 2nd grade to James Mosher Elementary School, and those students that will be in 3rd through 8th grade to Calverton Elementary Middle School. The zone for Alexander Hamilton will be absorbed into the Mosher Calverton zone. And then the Alexander Hamilton building would be surplus at the end of the 2021 school year when it's no longer needed for educational reasons. Next slide, please. Thank you. The considerations for this recommendation are that Alexander Hamilton is a small elementary school and it serves pre-K through 5 in West Baltimore, and it's very close to James Mosher and Calverton. It's recommended for closure due to 21st century building, and the enrollment trends in this area were not enough to sustain 3 schools. Back in 2017, the board voted to reconfigure the grades at Calverton Elementary Middle and James Mosher. James Mosher was voted to be reconfigured from a pre-K to 5 to a pre-K to 2, and Calverton was voted to be reconfigured from a pre-K to 8 to a 3 through 8. Calverton's reconfiguration was taken into effect early, and that was voted on last spring by the board. In the past, all 3 of these schools have received supplemental funding for the last 3 years due to the school sizes. And so by closing Alexander Hamilton and rezoning those students, it will allow for the students from this community to have additional success and be able to also attend not only a 21st century school, but a school that is larger and has more robust programming. This is the enrollment data for all 3 schools over time, and you can just see the numbers here showing that it really does not allow us to have 3 schools in this community that are large enough to really create additional programming and supports for students. Here you see the where students live from each of the 3 schools, with Calverton being in purple, Alexander Hamilton being in the reddish color, and James Mosher being in blue. And also you get a feel for the walking distance, which is the kind of dotted line on the outside, as well as the new zone, which is the yellow space here. And so you can see the schools, and that students that are within the zone, the expanded zone would be all 3 schools together. If the recommendation is approved, they're well within the recommended walking distance of 1 mile for elementary students and 1.5 for middle school students. And so you see here, just concerning that average distance, that for students that are currently at Alexander Hamilton in pre-K to 2, the average 0.23 miles is the distance for students now, and that will be slightly higher at 0.73, and you can see that those averages, minimum and maximum, is slightly more for the school, and that there are similar increases for students currently at Alexander Hamilton in 3 through 5. However, the averages as well as the minimum maximum are all within the 1 mile range. And so City Schools does provide yellow bus service to students that live more than a mile that are in elementary school to their neighborhood school. All the students here would fall below the 1 mile. Also, students that would be going to 3 through 8, it's the 1.5 miles and it's MTA transportation. Students that do receive transportation due to their IEP would continue to receive that if deemed appropriate based on the review of their IEP. You can also see on this slide just the building sizes. Calverton is currently, and Mosier are currently being built. We're currently working with those school leaders around academic planning, and those schools will be opening in the fall of this coming year. The state rated capacity for Calverton is for 821 students, and the state rated capacity for James Mosier is 405 students. And these are the number of students that the school would be able to accommodate fully.
So based on consideration of staff recommendations presented in the annual review recommendations, building a portfolio of schools report, testimony at the board special meeting and public meeting, the contents of the official record, and the 8 COMAR factors listed earlier this evening, it is the recommendation of the CEO that Alexander Hamilton program close effective summer 2021, that the board approve the merger of the James Mosher Elementary, Calverton Elementary, and Alexander Hamilton Elementary zones into one zone, with pre-kindergarten to grade 2 students in the zone rezoned to James Mosher Elementary School, and students in grades 3 through 8 rezoned to Calverton Elementary Middle School, and that City Schools surplus the Alexander Hamilton building effective summer 2021.
Madam Chair, before we take a vote, may I ask a question for clarification?
Yes, but I need the CEO to do a response.
I was trying to find my script so that I would say it properly. Let's see. My script.
I think you want to concur with the recommendation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I concur with the recommendation.
Okay.
As presented.
Okay, thank you. And now I'm going to open it to Mr. McFadden and board members if there are any questions.
Please forgive me for jumping in earlier than I should have. Ms. Alvarez, Angela, would you explain very briefly, if possible, what happens when a building is surplused? That process for the sake of the public to hear. What happens with those buildings once the school system surpluses those buildings back to the city?
Actually, I'm going to have Dr. Stewart address that question for us.
Sure. So our surplus process begins, of course, with this recommendation and then this board's vote. Then it goes to the Interagency Commission on Public Schools to then approve the surplus. Then it goes to through several different votes through the city. So first, their Space and Use Committee has to approve the surplus. And then at the end of the process, the Board of Estimates then has to finalize the transfer of the building from being under education's purview back to Baltimore City. So right now, Baltimore City has a task force that is led by folks over at the planning department, as well as staff in the mayor's office. So they convene a group of various city stakeholders to make recommendations. So, well, first to engage the community on what will happen to these buildings after they are turned over to the city, and then engaging in that process, and then figuring out what the next use of the buildings will be. So that is something to just be transparent, something that is continuing to evolve. The city is receiving a number of properties from us. Of course, they are all across different neighborhoods with different demand and interest from the public, but they are in the process of trying to solidify their process for engagement, and then also either selling a building or renting a building to some other stakeholder.
I appreciate that, Dr. Stewart. And is there any way, and I don't want to take up time, so I'll send the question a little later.
Okay. Are there any other questions? If not, is there a motion?
I move,
Commissioner.
I move that based upon the consideration of the recommendations and rationale of the CEO, the annual review recommendations, building a portfolio of schools report on November the 10th, the testimony given at the special session and public hearing, the contents of the official record, and the 8 COMAR factors, that the board accept the CEO's recommendations as stated.
Is there a second? Commissioner Reed, are you seconding?
Second, thank you.
Thank you. Again, I just want to remind everyone, as well as our commissioners, that there is a script for this. So please be mindful. I didn't mean to stop you, but we do have a very scripted piece that we must do for this process.
Thank you.
So it has been moved and seconded, and so now I'm going to do the vote for those in favor of this recommendation. Commissioner Bondima?
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner James? Commissioner McFadden?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts?
Yes.
Okay, I'm in favor. Is anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay, so I have 7 in favor, and I have 2 absent for this vote. So this recommendation passes. I still move to the next item.
So the next recommendation is for Guilford Elementary Middle School. The related schools are Walter P. Carter Elementary School, which just moved into its new building, as well as Lewis T. Murray Elementary Middle School as well. Next slide, please. The recommendation is to close Guilford Elementary School at the end of the 2021 school year and rezone the students to the Walter P. Carter Elementary Middle School. And also in doing so, expand Walter P. Carter's elementary middle school zone to include the Guilford zone, and then surplus the Guilford building in summer of 2021 when the building is no longer needed for educational reasons. Thank you. Considerations for this recommendation are in 2014-15, the board voted to amend the plan to include Guilford Elementary Middle School to close and merge with Walter P. Carter after completion of the renovation at the Walter P. Carter building, because there weren't enough students to really support 2 schools in this community. Guilford was selected to close because the majority of the students live closer to Walter P. Carter, and you'll see that when we look at the zone in a few moments. Closing Guilford allows students to attend a renovated 21st century school, and also allows them to attend a school that's larger and has more access to robust academic programming. This school also has a STEAM focus, as we've done the academic planning process with them throughout the last year. This school also is a specially designed campus and will house both Walter P. Carter and Lewis T. Murray, which is a separate public day school that serves elementary and middle grades. They're both housed on the same campus. This shows you the enrollment over the last several years for both schools, which indeed gives you the picture of really not having enough to support 2 schools in this area. The zones here, Walter P. Carter is in purple and Guilford is in red, and you see a lot of overlap here. You also see where the students for Guilford are living closer to Walter P. Carter. Walter P. Carter is down in the purple cross there, so a lot of students actually live closer to the Walter P. Carter zone than to Guilford, where they are currently going. So the expanded zone would include those schools, and you see that again in the average distance. So there is students that are currently in the Guilford zone are 0.46 miles from their school. They would be slightly less if the recommendation is approved to Walter P. Carter, and then the maximum is slightly less as well. The Walter P. Carter school, you can see that the state rated capacity for the new building is 824. Angela?
Sorry, I thought I was being heard. So based on consideration of staff recommendations presented in the annual review report, building a portfolio of schools, testimony at the board special meeting and public hearing, the contents of the official record, and the 8 COMAR factors listed this evening is the recommendation of the CEO, Guilford Elementary Middle School program close effective 2021, that the board approve the expansion of the Walter P. Carter Elementary Middle School zone to include the former Guilford zone, and that city schools surplus the building effective summer 2021.
I concur with the recommendation as stated.
Okay. Are there any questions? If not, is there a motion? Commissioner Richardson?
I move that based upon the consideration of the recommendations and rationale of the CEO, the annual review recommendations, building a portfolio of schools report issued on November 10th, the testimony given at the special session and public hearing, the contents of the official record, and the 8 COMAR factors, that the board accept the CEO's recommendations as stated.
Okay, is there a second to this motion?
Second, Roberts.
Thank you, Commissioner Roberts. And we'll vote all those in favor. Commissioner Bondima?
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner James back? Okay. Commissioner McFadden?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Okay. I'm in favor. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay, this recommendation is approved. I have 7 in favor and 2 absent. We'll move to the next. Thank you.
So the next recommendation we're going to share is for Lockerman Bundy Elementary School. The related schools, Marianne Winterling Elementary School. The recommendation is to close the Lockerman Bundy program at the end of school year 2021, to expand the Marianne Winterling zone to include the Lockerman Bundy zone, to adjust the Marianne Winterling zone so that it does not cross Route 40. Students on the other side of Route 40 will be rezoned to Harlem Park. This is only for new families, so existing families will be able to maintain their enrollment. And then the surplus the Lockerman Bundy building back to the city in the summer of 2021. Considerations, the enrollment in the area has been declining for both schools over time. Both Lockerman Bundy and Marianne Winterling have had to rely on baseline supplemental funding for the past 3 years in order to sustain their schools. Enrollment projections show that there's going to be continued declines for both schools. So combining both programs into one school would ease some of the funding challenge that each schools are individually facing. Both schools have really strong leadership who have already begun to do collaborative work even before we began this process. They already currently share some staff. They share some programming, after school programs, partners they share, field trips, experiences. So there's already been a lot of collaboration between the two school communities. If the board approves this, we would continue to work with those school communities in the way that Lindsay described at the start of this meeting, over the next couple of years to really support that transition and, to really bring the two school communities together. Again, we have really strong leaders here who've been really thoughtful. The other thing we would work with the school community around is how we maintain the history. Both schools are named after important educators from our school community, and we don't want to lose that legacy with this change. So that would all be part of what we do. The reason why we selected the Mary Ann Winterling program to house the school communities, because they both have similar enrollment challenges, is because that facility is in better condition. It's had more recent investment. There's been a major window, exterior door replacement. Those are capital projects that happened in 2018. We also had worked in the building through Heart of America, who improved the gym, the teacher's lounge, and they did some outdoor landscaping. There was HVAC replacement in 2013. Ms. Cindy Smith in our design and construction would identify some additional improvements that we can do if the board approves this recommendation within the in this facility. Again, we want to make sure that we're improving what students are receiving and not taking away when we make these kinds of changes. This shows the enrollment trend. So you can see, both schools have been under 300 students and they're getting, low, like even when we combine them, they'll still be like under 400 students. And so for a healthy elementary program, you want them to be around 400 or 500 students. So this helps to position them to be in a much more healthy size. That's still a small school. I think I want to say that really clearly. It's not that we want the schools to be large, we want them to be sustainable. And so there is a minimum that you start to impact sustainability and really what kind of programming that you can offer to students. And so this would alleviate some of those challenges. This shows the enrollment zone. So this dotted outline is the 1 mile perimeter around the school. The blue line in the middle shows and shaded in the yellow shows what the combined zone would be. Purple are your Mary Ann Winterling students and red are your Lackerman Bundy elementary students. The shaded pink line, not pink line, but pink area in the middle of this map is the neighborhood that would be rezoned to Harlem Park Elementary Middle School. Again, existing students who live there, they're already part of either Lackerman Bundy or Mary Ann Winterling under this recommendation would continue to be part of that. This is about any new families who move into that community would be rezoned to Harlem Park. And you can see, again, a safe walking distance for elementary students is anything that's less than a mile. For elementary students, these are all elementary students. And so you can see the change for Lackerman Bundy students to Mary Ann Winterling keeps them well under a mile. In fact, on average is less than a half a mile. Same thing with the change for the Mary Ann Winterling students and the Lackerman Bundy students, just based on that, for any new students living in that Harlem Park area, just based on what we see with current trends, would still keep them in that half a mile kind of walkability distance for any new families who live in that zone, just based on, that where that area is and where we see student location. And so based on consideration of staff recommendations presented in the annual review recommendations, building a portfolio of schools report, testimony at the board special meeting and public hearing, the contents of the official record, and the 8 COMAR factors listed earlier this evening. It is the recommendation of the CEO that the Lockman-Bundy Elementary School program close effective 2021, that the board approve the expansion of the Mary Ann Winterling Elementary School zone to include the Lockman-Bundy zone, that the zone be adjusted for students not currently enrolled at Lockman-Bundy or at Mary Ann Winterling so that it does not cross Route 40, that all other students living on the north side of Route 40 be rezoned to Harlem Park Elementary School beginning in the school year 21-22, and that city schools surplus the building back to the city of Baltimore effective summer 2021.
I concur with the recommendation as stated.
Are there any questions? If not, is there I hear a voice. I don't.
It's McFadden. It's Ronald. I just
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that both of these schools have significant orchids and arts programs. And I just want to make sure that as a result of the board's decision tonight, that these schools will continue to maintain, or this school will continue to maintain the strong arts program that I know is benefiting that particular community. So I just want to highlight that. We did get some feedback, particularly from the Orchids program as the board. So I just want to make sure that we're focused on maintaining that type of program in that community that needs it, but has also benefited from that program being there, even since I was at Booker T. So that was several years ago. So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner James?
Thank you. Thank you, Ronald, for the first part of my comment. My second question is about the work that might happen in Harlem Park. You know, we tend to work with really intentionality about merging schools and school climate. Are there plans to help create continuity between any students who would be rezoned to Harlem Park as well?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Commissioner James. For Harlem Park, it would be any new families would attend that zone. So it wouldn't be existing kind of families. So that school, so it's not the same as like combining a population of students.
So
it would be like the normal enrollment. Yeah, it would follow like the normal enrollment process, the normal way of welcoming families.
Okay. There still may need to be some attention to community building as children leave one neighborhood that tends to be, you know, that like this is my neighborhood goes to this school and I'm the one kid now going across or not going across 40 to a new school. So just a flag to pay attention to that and maybe do some extra sort of social emotional support for those students and those families.
Yeah, no, that's a good flag. We've been in contact with the principal of Harlem Park, so we'll continue to do that. That's a good flag. We'll take note of that.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, is there a motion then?
I move that based upon the consideration of the recommendations and rationale of the CEO, the annual review recommendations, building a portfolio of schools report issued on November 10th, the testimony given at the special session and public hearing, the contents of the official record, and the 8 COMAR factors, that the board accept the CEO's recommendations as stated.
Is there a second?
Second, McFadden.
Thank you, Commissioner McFadden. Thank you. And those in favor, Commissioner Bondima?
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Commissioner James?
Yes.
Commissioner McFadden?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm in favor. So this recommendation is approved. We have 8 in favor, 1 absent. Thank you. We move to the next school.
So the next recommendation is for Lois T. Murray Elementary School. Related schools are Walter P. Carter and Guilford Elementary because of that shared campus. So we talked about those related schools earlier tonight. The recommendation is to relocate the Lois T. Murray program to the renovated Walter P. Carter building at the end of this school year, and then to surplus the Lois T. Murray building in summer 2021 after it's no longer needed for educational purposes. So, for one of the things that we've been intentional about in the development of the 21st Century Buildings Plan that I kind of mentioned earlier is like paying attention to not just where these schools are located, but across populations. Our students in our separate public day schools are in buildings that are in poor shape, just like the remaining buildings that we have in the district. And so when it makes sense, we've identified separate public day schools to be renovated as part of the 21st Century Buildings Plan and to be in spaces that are designed for them. Many of our separate public day schools that are in existing district buildings are in buildings that weren't necessarily designed for their programs. So 21st Century gave us opportunity to create better spaces across student populations and in facilities that's designed for these specialized populations. This shows you the enrollment of the program. Enrollment is pretty consistent. Again, this is a separate public day school. So enrollment within a separate public day school is based on individual student need. These are students who have a LREF designation. And so their least restrictive environment is a separate public day school. So that enrollment is really based on those individual needs. So you see the trends for this program. For students who attend separate public day schools, they're coming citywide, again, based on individual need. So this is not a school like you're zoned to. So it's very different. What this map is showing you, however, is that the current location of Lois T. Murray is actually pretty close to their new location of Walter P. So you can see what the 1 mile perimeter looks like from the map we showed you earlier. This is kind of zoomed in at Walter P. And you can see Lois T, the existing building is sort of within that footprint. So that it's not a big, there's some neighborhood change, but it's not a massive change in terms of, where the program is located. You can go to the next slide. For this population of students, City Schools transports these students to school. And so one of the things we want to pay attention to is the length of time it takes them to travel. And so this distance gives us a sense of length of time. And so changing the location, based on existing students, reduces a bit the travel time for students on average from 5.2 miles to 4.6 miles. It reduces the student who's traveling the shortest distance to less than half of a mile, as well as the student who's traveling the furthest. So again, it reduces some of that travel time for these students. So based on the considerations of staff recommendations presented in the annual review recommendations, building a portfolio of schools report, testimony at the board special meeting and public hearing, the contents of the official record, and the 8 COMAR factors listed earlier this evening, is the recommendation of the CEO that the Lois T. Murray Elementary Middle School program relocate to its new specially designed space in the renovated 21st Century Walter P. Carter building effective summer 2021, and that City Schools surplus the current Lois T. Murray building back to the City of Baltimore effective summer 2021.
I concur with the recommendation as stated.
Okay. Are there any questions?
This is Vandima. I have a question after we vote.
All right. Is it pertinent to the vote itself?
It's
maybe
sort
better
of,
to go ahead and ask it now.
no, I can wait till after we vote.
Okay. Is there a second?
Well, I
I'm
have
sorry.
to make a motion.
Is there? I have to get. I got thrown off that time. Yes. Is there a motion?
I move that based upon the consideration of the recommendations and rationale of the CEO, the annual review recommendations, building a portfolio of schools report issued on November 10th, the testimony given at the special session and public hearing, the contents of the official record, and the 8 COMAR factors, that the board accept the CEO's recommendations as stated.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Bandima.
Okay, thank you. So let's, those in favor, we're voting. Commissioner Bandima?
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner James?
Yes.
Commissioner McFadden?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm in favor. So we have 8 in favor, 1 absent, and no abstentions. So this recommendation is approved. Go ahead, Commissioner Bandima.
Yeah, this doesn't directly, indirectly and directly relates to what we're doing tonight, but I wanted to ask this question from Angela before we move to the next one. And I know that you talked about this already, probably a million times. How many schools do we have in surplus right now that you can think of? How many schools are not, we're not capable of renovating the schools? Just a brief, I'd like to know, because we are putting schools in surplus and some are going back to the city. And I don't know if you talked about that. If you did, I missed it.
So Commissioner Bandima, I just want to make sure I understand your question, and I'm probably going to invite Dr. Stewart to help me answer this. Is your question, how many schools do we need to still renovate, or how many schools are we surplusing?
Yes, how many schools do we have sitting in surplus that's empty at this moment?
Schools that, are you saying how many schools do we have in our
Let me start
portfolio?
over.
Yeah.
Yes, let me start over. I didn't think it was going to be a hard question. How many schools do we have right now in surplus? And how many schools are sitting empty? How many buildings? Let's put it like that. How many buildings? Somebody needs to.
So in total, as a part of the MOU.
Dr. Stewart, one moment, please. I'm going to have to ask that folks who are watching, please to mute your microphones because we really are not able to hear very clearly. So if you are not a board member talking or one of the speakers, please mute your microphone. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Chenya. Yeah, that's right, Angela. I just wanted to know how many school buildings. Maybe I shouldn't have said schools. How many buildings are sitting empty right now? And how many schools? Go ahead.
So just to provide a bit of context, so as a part of the MOU, as a part of the 21st Century Buildings Plan MOU, we're required to surplus 26 buildings back to Baltimore City. As of the end of last year, we have surplused 17 of those schools. I do not have an exact count of which of those have been sold or rented. And based on what I explained earlier about buildings being located in different places and having different demand and different processes for how the city is going about trying to find the next use of buildings, that's not something we necessarily impact, but I can get a specific number of the 17 that we've surplus since the start, and which of those are currently empty and do not have any occupants.
Thank you, Dr. Stewart. It would be very interesting for us to know the situation with the building that we're either surplusing, it's being occupied, or it's going back to the city, or just sitting there in the community.
Sure, I can do that.
Okay, thank you very much. That's why I wanted to wait until after Angela, after we vote.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Bandima. But I also want to be certain that we're mindful that the original MOU for the 21st century building plan was that we were to surplus buildings as we were constructing newer buildings.
Right.
And as we had our occupancy rate of actual students using buildings to go up. So I just want to be mindful. I know it sounds interesting, but that is in fact the case in terms of this whole MOU.
Yes, I just wanted to know the numbers.
Okay.
That's what I needed to know. Thanks a lot.
So we're moving on. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So the
Go ahead.
next school
Thank
community we're going to talk about is the Sharp Leadenhall Elementary School. The related school is Hartford Heights, where they'll be sharing a campus, a renovated 21st century campus. So the recommendation is to relocate the Sharp Leadenhall program to its renovated Hartford Heights 21st century building at the end of the school year 2021, to surplus the Sharp Leadenhall building in summer 2021 when construction is complete and the facility is no longer needed for educational use. There's also a recommendation to change the grade configuration of Sharp Leadenhall from serving students in grades 1 through 5 to grades 1 through 8 for school year 21-22. So some of the considerations, as similar to Lois T, Sharp Leadenhall is again and is currently located in a facility that wasn't necessarily designed for its population. And so it was identified to be part of the 21st century building plan to get a specially designed space that addresses its needs. In terms of the grade configuration, we wanted to be able to allow placement for students who need a separate public day school after 5th grade, the option of an elementary middle setting as a placement to better meet their developmental needs. What we've been finding, there's a couple of things that's important here for me to expand on. One, what's happening now is we always want to ensure to meet the best interests of students based on research and based on the evidence, based on the law, is that you need students to be in their least restrictive environment. And so what's happening is we have a small population of students who are ready for middle grades instruction, but are not necessarily emotionally or developmentally ready to be in a secondary placement like Joseph C. Briscoe, who we end up placing in non-public placements, which is a more restrictive environment. And so we feel that it's important that we have the ability to meet the needs of those students in a more elementary, middle, more supportive environment. And that gets revisited each year as part of that AEP process. So it could be that you have a young person who is ready for 6th grade content, but not emotionally or socially ready to be in a secondary environment. And so they, if you approve this, would be able to stay at Sharp for that year. When their IEP team does a review in 7th grade, it might be in 7th grade that they're actually ready to go to Briscoe, and that's a more appropriate placement. So they get the opportunities that you get in a secondary placement. So we always have to be thinking about student need, student need in the placement of these students. Overall, our trend in students needing separate public day schools has been decreasing over time. We've gotten better at meeting the needs of students in lesser restrictive environments. You can go to the next. So this shows you the trend in terms of enrollment. So enrollment for Sharp Leadenhall, has been hanging around about 30 students when we look at like the last 4 years, students. And we don't anticipate if the board approves the change in grade configuration that it would grow much more than that. As you can see, when you look at the numbers of students in individual grades, we're talking about small numbers of students. So again, this is a very individualized placement, and we want to make sure that we can support students in the continuum based on their needs. When we think about our other separate public day schools that serve different populations than Sharp and Joseph C. Briscoe, both of these populations serve students who have emotional and behavioral disabilities. Our other schools serve students who may have more intellectual or medical disabilities. For those programs, we have that ability. We have like a elementary, middle, or a secondary option. So this puts this on par with some of our other separate public day programs also in terms of this recommended change. The other thing I want to be really clear, again, we're looking at about 30 students. The school facility is able to, has 70 space for 70 students based on how the state defines instructional spaces. So that's, 6 classrooms plus a science lab. In addition, there's other classrooms that don't necessarily, that are not counted necessarily in the way the state does it. And Dr. Stewart might need to jump in and correct me on how I'm describing the state kind of rated capacity. But it also has a gym space, which like if students are taking classes, they would be in gym, right? Art classroom and a music classroom. So there's also 3 other spaces that don't count in the state rated capacity, but are actual classroom spaces that would also, give in capacity. We don't imagine them going to 70 students. We think it'll, be here. We need to make sure, again, we can meet student needs, but I just wanted to be on the record about that. Part of our next steps is Dr. Brooks in our Office of Special Education is going to have her team, if you approve this, even if you don't approve it, her next steps is to work with that staff around their processes and their practices and readiness for meeting the needs of students who show up in these different ways. So some additional professional development is something that we've also targeted for this school population. And Dr. Stewart, I don't know if you want to, if I messed up on explaining that state rated capacity, I don't know if you want to add anything to that. Okay. So this shows you the location of the school. So at the bottom in red, in South Baltimore is where Sharp Leadenhall is located today, near Federal Hill. The new location in the 21st Century building is in the Northeast in the Hartford Heights building. So you can see that similar to Lois T, students are coming citywide to this program. Again, this is based on student need and it's not a zone school in that way. So similar to Lois T, we as a district transport these students to school. So one of the things we always want to pay attention to is commute times or distance. And so how long it takes us to transport students to school, something that we're mindful of. This change based on where students are live today would change the average commute times. It would reduce it, slightly from 4.11 miles to 3.81 miles based on existing student populations. The student who travels the shortest distance would have a little bit of a longer distance, and the student who travels the maximum distance would basically have the similar distance, 7 to 7.77 miles. So based on consideration of staff recommendations presented in the annual review recommendations, building a portfolio of schools report, testimony at the board special meeting and public hearing, the contents of the official record, and the 8 COMAR factors listed earlier this evening, it is a recommendation of the CEO that the Sharp Leadenhall Elementary School program relocate to its specially designed space in the new 21st Century Hartford Heights building effective summer 2021. That the grade configuration of the Sharp Leadenhall program be reconfigured from serving students in grades 1 through 5 to grade 1 through 8 beginning in school year 21-22, and that city schools surplus the current Sharp Leadenhall building to the city effective summer 2021.
I concur with the recommendation as stated.
Okay. Are there any questions? Not, is there a motion, Commissioner Richardson?
I move that based upon the consideration of the recommendations and rationale of the CEO, the annual review recommendations, building a portfolio of schools report issued on November 10th, the testimony given at the special session and public hearing, the contents of the official record, and the 8 COMAR factors, that the board accept the CEO's recommendation as stated.
Is there a second?
Second, Bondima.
Okay.
Thank you. Those in favor, Commissioner Bondima,
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks,
Yes.
Commissioner James,
Yes.
Commissioner McFadden,
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Reed,
Yes.
and I'm in favor. This recommendation is approved. We have 7 in favor and 1 absent. Thank you. We'll move to the next.
All right, so I'll be going through the additional recommendations for building surpluses. So the first recommendation is for the Harriet Tubman Building, and the recommendation is the surpluses Harriet Tubman Building in summer 2021 after it is no longer needed for educational purposes. So there are a few considerations. One, the Harriet Tubman Building has been used for the last 2 years by Robert Coleman Elementary School for swing space. Robert Coleman will be moving back into its renovated 21st century building in fall 2021, or rather school year 21-22. Given the importance of the school name and desire to maintain the history of schools as we make changes, staff will explore ways to honor the history of schools located in the building, as well as the name Harriet Tubman in our portfolio of schools. This visualization is just a map showing where the Harriet Tubman Building is. It's in the red text at the bottom of the map, and then the actual Robert Coleman location, which is at the top left of the map, and then the current or the 1920 Robert Coleman students and where they live in relation.
Based on consideration of staff recommendations presented in the annual review recommendations, building a portfolio of schools report, testimony at the board special meeting and public hearing, contents of the official record, and the 8 COMAR factors listed earlier this evening, it is the recommendation of the CEO that the Harriet Tubman Building be surplus to the city of Baltimore in summer 2021.
I concur with the recommendation as stated.
Okay. Are there any questions? If not, is there a motion?
I move that based upon the consideration of the recommendations and rationale of the CEO, the annual review recommendations, building a portfolio of schools report issued on November 10th, the testimony given at the special session and public hearings, the contents of the official record, and the 8 COMAR factors, that the board accept the CEO's recommendation as stated.
Is there a second?
Second, McFadden.
Thank you, Commissioner McFadden. And those in favor of this recommendation, Commissioner Bondima,
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks,
Yes.
Commissioner James,
Yes.
Commissioner McFadden,
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson,
Yes.
okay, Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Reed,
Yes.
I'm in favor. We have no one abstaining or opposed. So this recommendation is approved. We have 8 in favor and 1 absent. Move to the next.
The next building recommended for surplus is the William C. March Building. The recommendation is to surplus the William C. March Building in summer 2021 after it is no longer needed for educational purposes. For this building, we will retain the land for educational use on the Hartford Heights campus per the 21st century plan. Several considerations. The William C. March Building has been used for the last 2 years by Hartford Heights Elementary School for swing space. Hartford Heights will be moving back into its renovated 21st century building in fall 2021. After this, the building will no longer be needed for educational purposes. If approved, given the importance of school names and our desire to maintain the history of schools, staff would explore ways to honor the history of schools in partnership with the school community. This is a map of the William C. March building and then the Harford Heights building and the locations of students attending Harford Heights.
So based on consideration of staff recommendations presented in the annual review recommendations, building a portfolio of schools report, testimony at the board special meeting public hearing, the contents of the official record, and the 8 COMAR factors listed previously this evening, it is the recommendation of the CEO that the William C. March building be surplus to the city of Baltimore in 2021, and that per the 21st Century School Buildings Plan, City School retains the land for use by Harford Heights campus.
I concur with the recommendation as stated.
Are there any questions? Not, is there a motion?
I move that based upon the considerations of the recommendations and rationale of the CEO, the annual review recommendations, building a portfolio of schools report issued on November 10th, the testimony given at the special session and public hearings, the content of the official record, and the 8 COMAR factors, that the board accept the CEO's recommendation as stated.
Okay, is there a second?
Second, James. Second, James.
Thank you. Thank you. Those in favor, Commissioner Bondima,
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks,
Yes.
Commissioner James,
Yes.
Commissioner McFadden,
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Reed.
Yes.
Okay, I'm in favor. We have no one opposed, so this recommendation is also approved. We have 8 in favor and 1 absent. Okay.
So now
Is there another?
I'll now be presenting an amendment to Exhibit 6 for the benefit of the public. Based on the 21st Century Buildings Plan, Exhibit 6 is the list by which we track the buildings that we plan to surplus to meet the goal of surplusing the 26 buildings. So when there are needed changes or amendments to Exhibit 6, we present them through this process. The recommendation here is to amend the surplus date for the Northwestern building to summer 2025. The Northwestern building is currently on Exhibit 6 with a surplus date of 2021. It is still needed for Cross Country Elementary, whose building is expected to be completed in 2022. This building will also be needed for swing space for the 21st Century High School Buildings Plan. We decided that use this building for swing space for the high schools because it has a regulation size field for sports team, proper size gym for high schools, cafeteria, etc.
So it is a recommendation of the CEO that Exhibit 6 of the 21st Century Buildings Plan be amended to change the surplus date of Northwestern building from 2021 to 2025.
I concur with the recommendation as stated.
Are there any questions? If not, is there a motion?
I move that the board accept the CEO's recommendation as stated.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second, Robert.
Thank you. And those in favor, Commissioner Bondima,
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks,
Yes.
Commissioner James.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner McFadden,
Yes.
Commissioner Reed. Okay. Commissioner Richardson,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
Okay. Is Commissioner Reed still with us, or did I miss him? Okay, I'm in favor. So this recommendation is approved. I have 7 in favor and 2 absent.
Sorry, Reed's a yes. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. We have 8 in favor and 1 absent.
Okay.
No problem.
And then lastly, we have a recommendation to postpone a surplus for the West Baltimore building. So the recommendation is surplus the West Baltimore building in summer 2022 after it is no longer needed for educational purposes. A few considerations. First, the West Baltimore building has been used for the last 3 years by Calverton for swing space. And of course, Calverton will be moving back into the renovated 21st century building in fall 2021. The building may be needed to be used for swing space for North Bend Elementary School during the next school year, 21-22, while North Bend undergoes 2 capital improvement projects for a complete HVAC replacement as well as fire system replacement. After the potential use for swing space for North Bend, after we determine whether or not it's needed for swing space for North Bend, the building will no longer be needed for educational purposes. And then the rationale for the postponement, the vote on the surplus will be postponed until March 9th so that the vote can include consideration of what portions of the land to surplus. So the West Baltimore building is on the same parcel as the North Bend building. And so once that determination is made of where we need to subdivide that parcel, since they'll now be, will continue to have control over North Bend, but West Baltimore will be surplus and so we are recommending to postpone the vote in order to ensure that sufficient field space for North Bend exists as part of the subdivision. So this map, this map just shows the relationship between West Baltimore and the Calverton building and the Calverton students.
Before we start with a new recommendation, are there any questions about the West Baltimore postponement?
Yes, because this is being postponed for a vote in March.
Yes.
Hearing none, I guess we can move to the next one.
Okay.
So last, we have a new recommendation to share with the board and the public tonight. This is on a slightly different timeline than those you just voted on. We're sharing it as information tonight. There will be a board hearing on Tuesday, February 9th, after the regular board meeting. We anticipate that the board will vote on Tuesday, March 9th during the regular board meeting, and then the Friday before that, Friday, March 5th, is the last day to share written testimony to the board. This recommendation is for the surplus of the Winston building. And in addition to the dates I shared, we will be having one community meeting for that school community and that community on the surplus. So the recommendation tonight that we're sharing is to surplus the Winston building this summer, in summer 2021, after it will no longer be needed for educational purposes. As we shared in the beginning of the meeting, Walter P. Carter has been in the building for swing space while Walter P. Carter's new 21st century building was constructed. Walter P. Carter just moved back in, so we will not be needing the building any longer after this year. The building also has housed recently 2 charter schools, Banneker Lake Academy of Sciences, which closed in 2018, and Baltimore Collegiate School for Boys. The original Winston Middle School program closed in 2010. Next slide, please. So this illustration just shows where the Winston building is in relation to the Walter P. Carter students. And that's it.
I just want to thank, everybody that's worked on this. Again, this is a team, as you just saw a bit of the strong team that supports this work. It's just a lot of thoughtfulness that goes into this. It's a heavy lift. It's a lot of meetings, and we meet with community as much as needed, as much as possible. So there's more meetings than even the prescribed meetings that we do. I also just want to acknowledge the work of Lindsay Anderson on my staff. I just need to do that. It's a heavy lift, and normally we're in an office where she can have more people to lean on to support. And so having to do this in virtual and figure out how we do these virtual meetings and to do this work, I just want to acknowledge that. And a lot of the community, work is really driven by Lindsay. So I want to also just publicly acknowledge her work on this really important work that we do.
Thank you again, Ms. Alvarez, and all of the staff who've worked on this. Just know for our folks who are watching and participating with us that these are some very difficult decisions. We know that. We want to thank the staff for the amount of time. At the beginning, we actually expanded the time in terms of accompanying communities through this process, and we will continue to do that. But thank you again for the work. Thank you, board members, for the time in reviewing comments and being a part of some of the meetings to hear comments and to hear just in thoughts. So we are going to be moving forward to see if there are any board committee reports. I know we had a teaching and learning committee. I don't know if Commissioner McFadden would like to report out anything from that meeting.
Actually, Madam Chair, I would. There were two things that we discussed in our two presentations that we had in that last meeting. One was on gifted and advanced learning. And it seems like the district is doing a great job in expanding gifted and advanced learning throughout all of our schools. All of our schools, at least high schools, now have AP programs, advanced placement options for our young people. So that was good for us to hear. But then we also heard about potential changes to the operator renewal process. And Commissioner Richardson joined us in our committee meeting also. As the district is trying to figure out ways to move forward with renewal and with our programs that need to be renewed. So it was a great conversation. I just wanted to let the board know that. And if you want to go back, as always, members of the public can also go back into YouTube and revisit those meetings because they are all posted now. That is a blessing of us being virtual, right? I think they were posted whether we were virtual or not. Are you all there?
Thank you. Yes. Okay. All right. Just a reminder to folks of upcoming meetings for the board and committees. There will be. Sorry, I'm trying to read my notes as I go through. There will be an operations committee meeting on Tuesday, January the 19th. There will also be a policy committee meeting on January the 19th. The operations committee meeting is at 10:30 a.m. Policy committee at 3:30 p.m. There's an audit committee meeting on January the 20th also on January 20th. And the next teaching and learning committee will be on February the 2nd at 3:30. All of these remain as virtual meetings. You are invited to join. And let's see, are there any other announcements?
Madam
Anything
Chair,
that I've missed that I need to? Yes.
Madam Chair, we won't meet before your birthday, but you do have a birthday on the 21st of January. So I would like to wish our chair, our wonderful, illustrious chair, Madam Chair Chinya, a happy early birthday, because we'll see her after her birthday officially occurs. So happy birthday, Madam.
Happy birthday.
Well, thank you.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. You are so good.
Well, That's the beginning of the next presidential time. So it'll be a great day to celebrate. Thank you all.
Oh, yeah.
Virginia, before we end,
If there is there, oh, go ahead. I hear
I
another
apologize.
voice.
Thank you. I wanted to say first to all the board members, happy School Board Recognition Month, because this is January is the month that we want to recognize the school board members. So happy School Board Recognition Month. I would like to say thank you all for your dedication and your service that we do for our students and our peers. But also I would like to highlight tomorrow, January 13th, I will be holding my the very first Speak Up Reach Out session. This is a session where I just want to really include students and ensure that they have a voice in the decisions that are being made before them. And I want to make sure that if anyone on the call has any students who are interested, please click on the link. If you need it, you can email me and I can send out the link. That way you can sign up. I'm very interested in to hear from you. That way I can bring this information back to the board so we can be more beneficial in the work that we do. So that's it. Thank you. And once again, happy early birthday, Virginia.
Commissioner, did you get an email?
Commissioner Sykes, what time is your forum?
I apologize. So the forum will begin at 6 o'clock through 7:30 p.m. And you can sign up all the way up until 4 p.m. tomorrow. Tomorrow evening you can sign up until 4 p.m. and it will last from 6 to 7:30 p.m. And this is the second Wednesday. I apologize. So this will be a group format.
Did you get an email from Megan Stinnett?
I did.
Okay.
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 All righty. At this point, I am looking to see if there is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Oh, I hear several, which I'll take as the motion and the second. Is there any objection to us adjourning this evening at 8:20 p.m.? If not, then our meeting is adjourned. I want to thank all the board members. I want to thank the staff. I want to thank our mentors and families who've joined us. Please have a very safe, and we will see you again at our next board meeting on January the 26th, I believe. So thank you very much. Good night.
Okay, thank
Good
you.
evening,
Have a good
everyone.
week.
Stay safe.